Hey guys, tonight we're going to do something a little different. You're going to wake up in the year 800 AD as a blacksmith. Yeah, you probably won't survive this. But don't worry, we're not in a rush. We'll ease into it, one clang at a time. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Oh, and drop your city and what time you're listening in the comments. I want to see who else is lying in bed at 2:37 AM listening to historical sleep stories instead of, sleeping. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up coughing, your eyes sting, there's smoke. Real, dense, punch you in the throat kind of smoke. It clings to your clothes, your skin, even your teeth. You try to sit up, but something heavy presses against your chest. Oh wait, it's not your chest. It's a thick leather apron crusted with soot. Your hands are filthy, black fingernails. The scent of iron and ash is baked into your hair. There's a forge roaring nearby, red hot and alive, and someone's hammering on metal like they're mad at it. You're not in your bed, not even close. The walls around you are timber, thick and roughly hewn. There's no glass in the windows, just slats and shutters. Tools hang from hooks hammered into beams, each one slightly rusted but still brutally functional. There's no buzzing electric light, just daylight pouring in and a few oil lamps flickering on a nearby shelf. The floor is packed dirt, warm under your bare feet. You're standing in the middle of a blacksmith's workshop, and from the look of your hands you are the blacksmith, or at least you're dressed like one. The grime's authentic and the muscle aches are definitely yours. A man shouts from outside. It's a guttural sound, thick with an accent you don't quite recognise. You wander out into the sun, and it blinds you. When your eyes adjust, you see a village stretched out before you. Thatched roofs, narrow lanes, people in coarse tunics and cloaks, their boots caked with mud. A pair of pigs snuffle near a well. Chickens cross the road, because apparently that joke has very old origins. There's a cluster of kids watching you from the edge of the forge, eyes wide. One whispers, "He looks funny today," and another shushes him. You shuffle back inside, half expecting someone to pop out and yell, "Gotcha!" But no, it's just you and the glowing heart of the forge. Something instinctive kicks in. Your feet know where to walk, your hands know what tongs to grab. You reach for a lump of iron, dark and cold, and your body, without asking your permission, just starts working. You place it in the fire. You pump the bellows, and the flames flare with a hunger that feels almost alive. The roar of it is both terrifying and comforting, like you've just fed some ancient god. The hammer comes next. It feels heavy in your grip, but natural. You swing it once, twice, and on the third try, you strike the iron with a satisfying clang that echoes in your bones. Sparks shoot out, hissing as they land on your apron. Your arms already ache. The rhythm comes slowly at first, like you're playing a song you forgot you knew, but it builds. Your mind drifts as your body works, because this is the kind of job where your hands do the thinking. The clangs of the hammer take on a heartbeat like cadence. You can smell the metal oxidizing, the charred wood, the sweat rolling down your neck. This place is ancient, alive, and doesn't care if you understand it yet. You're not working for fun. You're working because someone's expecting something. A horseshoe, a knife, maybe a new hinge for a barn door. You have a deadline, and you're already behind. You find a bucket and plunge the hot iron into water, and the hiss is thunderous. Steam wraps around your face and instantly dampens your tunic. Everything smells like boiling blood and old nails. You look down and realise that what you've made is not terrible. It's not art, but it's real. Functional. Rough. Ugly. But real. And there's a weird pride in that. Somewhere in the corner of your vision you spot a small shrine, a figure carved from wood, set above a bundle of dried herbs and feathers. A Norse god? A local spirit? You're not sure, but clearly smithing here isn't just technical, it's sacred, or superstitious, or both. You make a mental note to ask someone about it, if you can speak whatever language they're using around here. A little while later you catch your reflection in a sheet of slightly polished metal. You look older, or maybe just dirtier. Your hair's longer, your face leaner, your eyes set deeper. There's a scar along your jaw you don't remember earning, but it suits you. It looks like you've been here a while, long enough to know how to swing a hammer without breaking your wrist, long enough to have stories. And then, you hear it. Hoofbeats. The sound of a horse approaching at a fast trot. A figure rides into view, cloaked and broad-shouldered, leading a tired pony laden with a wooden cart. They call your name, not the one you're used to, but the one you apparently go by now. The voice is rough but familiar. You step outside and the rider tosses you a small pouch of coins, already glinting with sweat. "Another set of nails," he grunts, dismounting. "And don't make them like last time." They bent. You nod automatically. Maybe you'll figure out what he means later, but for now your hands are already reaching for the iron again. The forge, like a hungry pet, is already warming back up, and you realise something strange. You're not entirely scared anymore. The forge is your world now, and you're beginning to realise just how central it is, not just to your day, but to the rhythm of the entire village. When you walk inside again, your senses are already adjusting. The thick, smoky air no longer feels suffocating, and the constant noise of metal on metal fades into a kind of background music. You're not here to admire the ambience, though. You're surrounded by tools that look like they've seen a few lifetimes. Long-handled hammers, weird curved tongs, piles of unidentifiable iron lumps, and every single one of them has a role to play. You give yourself a slow spin, taking in the layout. On one side, the forge itself, a pit of coals that crackles with a fiery hunger. It's framed by a brick base, clearly built by someone who knew what they were doing. A thick iron pipe extends from the back, curling upward through a crude chimney vent to funnel smoke out. Hanging above the fire is a set of blackened iron rods, each one resting in notches carved into a wooden rack. They're sorted by thickness, not alphabetically, because no one in here cares about the alphabet. Then there's the anvil. It sits dead centre, like an altar. You don't need to be a historian to know this is the heart of everything. It's blocky, ancient, and riddled with tiny dents from years of use. Its edges are worn smooth, like the rail of a public staircase. The horn is scratched and scored from shaping curves and edges. Every mark on it tells a story. There's a sledgehammer leaning beside it that looks like it could level a stone wall, and probably has. Off to the side is a massive set of bellows, lashed together with thick leather and wood. You walk over and pump it once just to feel the action. It's surprisingly smooth, and with one push the fire swells to life again, its heat brushing your face like the breath of some angry beast. You can already see how this whole operation depends on timing. How long you leave the iron in, how often you strike it, how precisely you quench it before it turns brittle. There's also a grindstone turned by hand or possibly by foot, with a small bucket of water nearby. You recognise this as your sharpening station, because tools that don't cut aren't tools at all. And then, in the far corner, shelves upon shelves of nails, horseshoes, blades, broken parts waiting to be repaired, and half-finished projects that look like they were started during a thunderstorm and abandoned in frustration. Suddenly you notice something moving at your feet. A cat. Scruffy, half-bald, tail kinked, but very much at home here. It doesn't care that you're a stranger in your own body. It yawns, flicks its ear, and curls up beside a warm brick. Apparently you have company. A customer arrives, an old woman with arms like twisted rope and a basket of bent hinges. She says something to you in a rough dialect that sounds Germanic or maybe Norse. You catch only pieces, but her tone says it all. These hinges are trash and you're going to fix them. You nod because really, what choice do you have? She throws a suspicious glance at your hesitant movements and squints at you, like she's trying to figure out what's off. You mumble something reassuring, mostly vowel sounds, and she grunts. "Tomorrow." Then she waddles off, muttering to herself. After she leaves, you take a closer look at the broken pieces. They're simple in shape, but you can tell they're hand-forged, which means someone else already spent hours making them. Now they're yours to unbend, reshape, and bring back to life. You lay them out on the bench and realise that the artistry here isn't just about weapons or showy armour. It's about function. Every hinge keeps a door from falling. Every nail holds something vital together. Your hands, by proxy, keep everything from collapsing. Later in the day, another man shows up, this time younger, lean, with a bow slung over his shoulder. He drops a knife on your bench, blade dulled and handle worn to splinters. "Make it bite again," he says with a grin. That part you understand, so you set to work. You heat the blade in the forge until it glows red, then begin hammering along the spine to correct a small bend. The metal sings with each strike, and you fall into that same trance again, the kind where the rhythm pulls you forward. It's not just physical, there's a logic to it. You remember reading something about carbon content and tempering in school. Turns out, You don't need a chemistry lab. You just need patience, fire, and the ability to know by eye when something is too hot or just right. While you work, you realise there's an odd sort of reverence around the tools here. Some of them have markings scratched into the wood, symbols, runes maybe. One has a little knot of hair tied around the handle. That one you don't touch. It's getting dark when you finally put the tools down. The fire's still glowing, casting long shadows across the shop. You sit on a stool that creaks like it's judging your weight, and rest your hands on your lap. Blisters are forming on your palms and you welcome them. They're proof. Proof that you did something real today. Something heavy, dirty, and ancient. Your back is sore, your eyes sting, and your shirt is soaked through with sweat. But for the first time since waking up, you feel oddly at home. Here's a fun detail you stumble across. Tucked beneath a loose floorboard near the sharpening stone is a little bundle of iron slag and bone fragments, deliberately placed. A blacksmith's charm. The superstition goes that it wards off bad spirits, especially ones drawn to flame. You put the board back carefully and pretend you didn't see it. No need to make enemies on your first day in someone else's shoes. Later you lean against the forge wall and stare out through the shutters. The stars are starting to appear, and the night is still. From somewhere nearby you hear a dog bark and the clatter of dishes being washed in cold water. A bell rings, someone calling their children home. The world outside the forge moves on, but in here time slows down. You're not from here, but you belong now, even if it's just for the night. Your morning routine now begins not with an alarm clock, but with the thump of your own heartbeat syncing to the rhythm of early medieval life. There's no sun streaming through fancy curtains, just pale grey light squeezing through the wooden shutters like a reluctant guest. You're curled up on a straw-stuffed mattress in a corner of the forge, still fully dressed, smelling like ash and regret. The blanket, if you can even call it that, is more like a burlap sack someone gave up on halfway through weaving. It doesn't keep out the cold, but at least it keeps the fleas company. Your first conscious thought is that your back hurts. Badly. The second is that your mouth feels like it's full of charcoal, which, to be fair, might not be that far off. There's no sink to stumble toward, no electric toothbrush buzzing with judgment. Instead, you drag yourself upright, spit into a corner, and rinse your mouth with the flat, sour ale left over from the night before. It tastes like someone brewed bread and gave up halfway. You swish it, swallow it, because what else are you going to do, and then wipe your mouth on your sleeve like a true medieval gentleman. Outside, the village is already alive. You can hear it. Boots on dirt, chickens clucking, dogs barking, someone yelling something about a goat. You pull on your boots, which are stiff with sweat and soot, and stretch until your joints snap like firewood. Then it's straight to the fire. Because in this world there is no time for idle mornings or self-care routines. The forge doesn't light itself, and customers are probably already out there, glaring at your door like their entire existence depends on a properly balanced hammerhead. You grab some kindling from the corner, a mix of dried sticks, straw, and some weird waxy wood shavings that smell like pine and burnt honey, and set them beneath the cold forge. With flint and steel, you spark the fire into reluctant life. It takes a few tries and more curses than you'd like to admit, but eventually the smoke starts to rise, thick and slow like a dragon waking from a nap. Then come the bellows. You've developed a love-hate relationship with them. On one hand, they're your best tool. On the other, they require the enthusiasm of a man twice your current energy level. Still, you pump, watching the fire flare and grow hotter with each blast of air. The coals go from dull grey to glowing orange to eye-searing white, and the warmth begins to creep into your bones. You're awake now. Sort of. Your first customer of the day shows up before the forge is even ready. A farmer with hay in his beard and a wagon axle in his arms. The wood's cracked, but the metal rim is salvageable. He drops it with a grunt and says something that sounds like, "Fix fast." Cart no roll, you nod. You're still not fluent in whatever this dialect is, but urgency and desperation are universal languages. While the metal heats, you allow yourself one luxury, a bowl of hot porridge. It's not yours. You traded for it last night. A few nails for a small pot. It's thin, slightly burnt, but warm and oddly comforting. It sticks to your ribs in the best way. As you eat, you watch your apprentice walk in. Yes, apparently you have one now. He's maybe 12, all elbows and attitude, with a bowl haircut that looks like it lost a bet. He greets you with a nod that says, "I'm here, not thrilled about it." Then he heads to his corner and starts sorting scrap metal with the enthusiasm of a barn cat watching a sermon. You get to work on the axle. The metal rim is misshapen, but a few minutes of gentle heating and careful hammering bring it back to life. Not perfect, but it'll hold. The farmer grunts approval, tosses you a few bent coins and disappears. One down, a dozen more to go. Your apprentice, meanwhile, is now playing with a chunk of iron like it's a toy. You walk over, take it from him, and drop it on his foot. Not hard, just enough to make a point. He yelps, hops on one leg and gives you a look of betrayal. You smile. Lesson learned. Metal is not a toy. Welcome to the forge. By midday the sun is filtering through the smoke-streaked shutters, casting golden shafts of light that make the dust in the air look like slow-motion snow. You're already slick with sweat, your arms sore from swinging the hammer, your neck stiff from hunching over the anvil. And yet, there's a rhythm to it now. Repetition has given way to instinct. You recognize different metals by smell, by the way they sound when tapped, by how quickly they heat in the coals. It's almost alchemical. Speaking of alchemy, there's a strange little bag hanging on the wall near the fire. You didn't notice it before. It's leather, cracked with age, and tied shut with a piece of twine. When you open it, expecting nails or scraps, you find teeth. Human teeth. You stare at them for a moment, then quietly put the bag back. You're not ready to unpack that particular mystery before lunch. There's a quirky belief you pick up from a passing trader later in the day. Some blacksmiths believe that if you hammer iron while whispering a secret into it, the metal remembers it. So, while shaping a horseshoe, you mumble something like, "I hope I don't die in this timeline." It feels ridiculous, but then again, everything about this situation already is. As the day wears on, the smell of burning hoof trimmings wafts in from somewhere nearby. You realise the farrier's at work. That's the guy who handles the shoeing of horses. And you're reminded that blacksmiths and farriers often overlap. You'll probably have to learn that side of things soon, or pretend to. You're hoping no one asks you to approach a live horse just yet. You have enough scars already. You knock off work just as the sun starts to sink. Your arms are noodles, your legs jelly, and your face feels like it's been baked. But there's something weirdly satisfying about it all. You're exhausted, but in a clean, used-up way. You've earned every ache, every blister, every smear of soot. As you close up shop for the night, you hear someone singing faintly in the distance. It's a woman's voice, slow and haunting, echoing through the trees. Your apprentice mumbles, "Spirit song," before crawling into his own pile of straw. You don't ask. Some things are better left unanswered on your third day in a world where toothpaste doesn't exist, and fire is your best friend and worst enemy. You lie down beside the slowly cooling forge, letting the heat soak into your back. The fire crackles beside you, soft and low. There's no moon tonight, just stars, and the sound of crickets outside the workshop. You're already drifting, soot-covered and bone-tired, when a voice from the shadows mutters, "The Lord's messenger comes tomorrow. Best be ready." You don't respond. You're already asleep, your dreams full of hammer blows and stars. You're woken before the sun, not by birdsong or gentle rays of light, but by your apprentice accidentally knocking over a bucket of coal with the grace of a limping cow. It crashes to the ground in a cascade of clinks and curses. You groan, roll over, and immediately regret it. Your back feels like someone beat it with your own hammer. The apprentice mumbles a half-hearted apology, then kicks the coal back into place with one bare foot, which seems ill-advised. You're too tired to correct him. Let natural selection handle that one. Still half asleep, you force yourself upright and start the fire again. There's no such thing as a slow start here. The forge has to be awake before you are, and if you're lucky, it'll forgive you for letting it go cold overnight. You go through the familiar motions. Flint, tinder, bellows, a few muttered threats to the universe. The flames catch eventually with that warm, familiar whoosh, and you exhale like you've just fed a wild animal that could eat you if it wanted. Today feels different. Maybe it's the tense energy in the village air, maybe it's just your own nerves, but something's definitely off. It starts when the old blacksmith, your mentor apparently, shuffles in, eyes red and jaw clenched. You haven't seen him for 2 days. He smells like stale beer and regret. He walks in like he owns the place, because he does, snatches the tongs from your hand mid-swing, and begins hammering a blade like it's a personal insult. You step back. There's no talking, just that relentless rhythm, and you quickly remember you're not the master here. You're still the help. He pauses only to drink directly from a brown clay jug that smells like something between vinegar and death. You glance at your apprentice, who shrugs like this is normal. Maybe it is. As the old man works, you fall into the background, cleaning tools, sorting nails, dodging the occasional flying spark. You want to ask him something, anything, about who you are, what's expected of you, how the forge really works, but every time you open your mouth, he slams the hammer down harder. Message received. Shut up and observe. Hours pass. You work in silence, fetching and carrying while your mentor shapes a blade with the focus of someone preparing for a duel. And maybe he is. Around midday, without warning, he throws the half-finished sword into a trough and storms out. You watch him leave, confused and mildly concerned. The door slams and you're left with the hiss of cooling metal and your own unanswered questions. You're not alone for long. A group of men arrive soon after. 3 of them, cloaked, armoured, with the kind of permanent scowls that suggest they've never had a good meal or a good joke in their lives. One of them steps forward, squints at you, and says your name, or at least the name you've been answering to since you woke up here. You nod cautiously. He drops a dented helmet on the workbench. "Can this be mended before sunset?" he asks. You pick up the helmet. It's bashed in on one side like someone tried to headbutt a stone wall and lost. The metal is thick, heavier than anything you've worked with so far. Fixable? Yes. Easy? Absolutely not. You nod anyway. He gives you a curt grunt of approval, tosses you a small pouch that clinks with coins, and leaves without another word. Classic medieval customer service. Efficient, but slightly terrifying. You start the repairs immediately. This helmet isn't just for looks, it's functional, designed to protect someone's skull from a very real sword. The dents need to be hammered out from the inside without cracking the dome. You heat it slowly, carefully, rotating it like a roasted chestnut over the flames. Then you bring it to the anvil, wedge it onto a stump carved to cradle-round shapes, and begin hammering. Each clang reverberates through your arms and into your chest. You sweat instantly. The apprentice offers to help, but you wave him off. This kind of work takes focus, precision, and let's be honest, trust. You're still not over the whole coal bucket incident. Time slides by in waves of heat and hammering. You lose track of the hours. Your forearms scream, your fingers blister, and your neck stiffens like it's made of rope. But slowly, methodically, the helmet regains its shape. Not flawless, but strong, functional, respectable. You finish by buffing it with a gritty paste made from crushed stones and animal fat. It smells awful, but the metal shines beneath the grime, and that's what matters. As the sun begins to dip, the soldiers return. The leader picks up the helmet, examines it under the low light, and gives a single nod of approval. "Good," he says. Then he glances toward the back of the forge. "Where is the master?" You shrug. You haven't seen the old man since he stormed out. The soldier narrows his eyes. He has work due for the Baron. Tell him the debt doesn't disappear just because he drinks. With that ominous little farewell, they leave. And just like that, the pressure shifts. You look around the forge, now quiet again, and realize something a little terrifying. You're basically running the place now. Whether it's temporary or permanent doesn't matter. People are coming to you with their needs, their broken tools, their bent armor. You're not just the help anymore. You're the blacksmith, at least until someone says otherwise. Later that evening, the apprentice approaches you with something behind his back. He looks sheepish, which is already weird because smug is his default. When he finally shows you what he's hiding, it's a small iron medallion on a strip of leather, crude, circular, and etched with a simple spiral. You frown. "What is it?" you ask. He shrugs. "Old luck charm. Master said it kept fire spirits away." You raise an eyebrow. "And now?" "He said it stopped working after he made a sword for a Viking," the boy replies, then scurries away before you can ask what that means. You sit by the dying forge fire, medallion in hand, listening to the wood crackle. Your arms feel like jelly. Your clothes are glued to your skin with sweat, and your throat is dry from breathing smoke all day. Still, you can't help but smile just a little. You survived another day. A brutal, unforgiving, confusing day, but one where you made something real. Something that might just save someone's life. As darkness creeps in and the village quiets, you tie the medallion around your wrist. Not because you believe in fire spirits necessarily, but because in a world like this, you're willing to believe in anything that helps you make it to morning. You start to notice something. Now that the days are stacking up like firewood, everyone depends on you. Not in the glamorous standing on a mountain peak kind of way, but in the quiet, exhausting, underappreciated way that makes you realise this forge is the beating, blackened heart of the entire village. Nothing here runs without iron, and iron doesn't shape itself. People don't come here because they like you, they come because they need you. It begins early again, with someone pounding on the wooden door of the forge like it owes them money. You roll out of your straw pile, rub soot out of your eyes, and crack the door open to find a man holding a ploughshare that's broken clean in half. He looks like he hasn't slept in a week and has mud in places mud shouldn't be. "Snapped on a stone," he says through gritted teeth. "Harvest coming." Need it today. You want to tell him that iron doesn't magically fuse back together like bread dough, but instead you just grunt and take it from him, promising a solution. You've stopped asking for time. There is no time. There's only now and when it breaks again. The work is relentless. Axes dulled from chopping winter firewood, nails needed to repair a sagging barn, a sickle with a missing tooth, which somehow matters more than the sickle's entire bent frame. You're patching up the skeleton of this village, one rusty bone at a time. Without your forge, fields don't get tilled, animals don't get shoed, doors fall off hinges and carts collapse in the middle of muddy roads. And when that happens, food stops moving, trade stops happening, people go hungry. So yeah, no pressure. You have to admit, it's kind of empowering. Exhausting, but empowering. The apprentice trails after you now like a confused duckling, always asking questions, sometimes useful ones. Why do we quench in water and not oil? What's this weird-looking nail for? Is it true blacksmiths can tell fortunes by the colour of sparks? That last one makes you pause. You hadn't heard that one before. He nods, serious. They say if the sparks fly blue, it's death. If they're yellow, it's luck. You glance toward the forge. The fire's burning a clean orange, but now you're going to start second-guessing every flicker. Thanks, kid. By midday, your hands are raw again. You've been filing a broken scythe blade down to something halfway usable, and the constant rasping sound is starting to feel like it's scraping your skull. You take a break, step outside, and lean against the warm timber of the forge wall. The village is buzzing, alive in a way that doesn't involve electricity or machines. Just people shouting, carts creaking, goats arguing with children. A woman walks past holding a copper pot with a bent handle. She sees you, raises an eyebrow and gestures. Later, she asks, you nod. Of course. It clicks for you then. Your work is invisible once it's done, but completely obvious when it isn't. No one says thank you when a hinge works, but they'll curse your name when it doesn't. You're like gravity or clean air. Absolutely vital. Completely taken for granted. The local tanner stops by in the late afternoon with a bundle of iron rings, requesting you help him reinforce a set of leather harnesses. He's got that permanent scowl tanners seem to cultivate. Maybe it's all the scraping of dead animals, but he gives you a nod, which might be the tanner equivalent of a hug. You take the rings and promise to have them by next week. He grunts, satisfied. Later, you're reshaping a wagon wheel rim, painstakingly heating and bending the iron into a circle that doesn't look like it got kicked by a drunken ox, when you hear a familiar voice at the door. It's the old woman with the hinges. You almost forgot. She hasn't. She's brought more hinges, and a new request. A pothook for her hearth. The one I have's too short, she says. Nearly burned my eyebrows off last night. You agree, not just because it's your job, but because the idea of this woman without eyebrows sounds genuinely terrifying. The apprentice is the one who whispers what you've been slowly realising. The whole village runs on what comes out of here. And he's right. You're not just a blacksmith. You're a necessary gear in the medieval machine. Farmers, hunters, builders, traders, the occasional travelling drunk, they all orbit your little forge like sooty planets. And while they might roll their eyes or mutter under their breath, they keep coming back. You think of the strange, back-breaking process behind every tool. It all starts with ore, dug from the earth by men with pickaxes and sawbacks. Then it's smelted down, purified, hammered, shaped. You're the last link in that grimy chain, and the one who determines whether the final result is useful or just a lump of disappointment. One of the more fascinating things you begin to pick up from conversations, half overheard, half explained, is that you're also expected to be a kind of engineer. A man comes in with an idea for a trapdoor that can drop open with a hidden lever. Another wants a fire grate that rotates so he can cook meat evenly without burning his hands. There are no schematics, no blueprints, just vague gestures and a lot of, you know what I mean, but they trust you to figure it out. You're not just hammering metal, you're inventing solutions. Then there's the weird stuff. A travelling merchant comes through late one evening, asking for a series of unusually shaped hooks. Small, delicate, and shaped like no farming tool you've seen before. He says they're for a performance. You don't ask questions, you make the hooks. But when he leaves, you notice he's headed toward the woods, not the village. Okay, maybe a few questions. And there are rumours too. Whispers of other smiths in far-off towns who can shape metal that never rusts, or who forge weapons that never dull. Some say they mix blood into the iron. Others talk of blacksmiths who work only at night, and no one sees them eat. The apprentice eats up these tales like candy. You, on the other hand, just hope your tongs don't snap again. You wrap the day with a final inspection of your tools. Hammers, worn but solid. Tongs, still gripping like champions. Anvil, unbothered, eternal. You run your hand along its edge and feel the thousands of tiny dents left behind by years of shaping and tempering. It's comforting in a way. You've left no mark here yet, but maybe eventually you will. As night falls and the forge cools, you sit with your apprentice near the embers, sipping watery ale and chewing on black bread so hard it might file your teeth down. You ask him what the village did before your forge existed. We traded for nails, he says, or did without. You raise your eyebrows. Did without? He shrugs. You'd be surprised what people can make from rope and patience. You look around the forge, still warm and breathing like a sleeping animal. Rope and patience, hun. Not anymore. The man standing in your doorway isn't from the village. You know that before he even speaks. He's taller, broader, and carries himself like someone who expects things to move when he walks toward them, like doors or people or entire laws of physics. He's got a beard that looks like it's been combed with a dagger and armour that doesn't just gleam. It glows in the sunlight like it's been polished by angels on commission. He's clearly seen battle, probably won most of them, and now he's standing in your forge, tapping a thick-fingered hand on your workbench and saying he needs an axe. Not a hatchet, not a woodcutter's tool, a weapon. You don't ask questions, but the air is suddenly heavy, like the moment before a thunderstorm. His voice is calm, but there's something in it, something low and dangerous. He says he's travelling north, that he needs something balanced, brutal, and beautiful. You're not sure if he's flirting or planning a war, but either way you nod and ask him for 3 days. He gives you 1. You watch him leave, his boots making dull thuds down the packed earth road, and the village instinctively parts to let him through. The apprentice stands beside you, looking very small and very interested. He looked like a berserker, the boy whispers. Or a jarl. You have no idea what a jarl is, but you agree anyway, because the last thing you want is to jinx this by pretending you know what you're doing. So now you've got 1 day to make the perfect axe. No pressure. You start by choosing the right iron. Not too soft. This thing needs to cleave through more than just firewood, but not so brittle it shatters the first time it meets another blade. You pick through your supply, searching for a piece that feels right in your hand, like it already knows what it wants to become. The iron you choose is dense, heavy, and dark, with streaks of silver threading through it like veins. The shaping process is intense. You heat the billet until it glows like molten amber and start hammering, slowly at first, then faster as the metal yields to your rhythm. The forge roars behind you, and the hammer sings on the anvil, each strike a note in a dangerous song. The apprentice watches from the corner, wide-eyed and silent for once. He knows this isn't just another horseshoe. This is something different, something serious. The blade begins to take shape, broad, single-edged, with a gently curving arc meant for maximum damage. You flare out the beard of the axe, giving it that distinctive shape that lets it hook, pull and destroy in close combat. It's the kind of weapon that says, I didn't come here to negotiate. As you work, your mind starts to drift. Not lazily, but in that hyper-focused way where everything around you blurs into white noise, and all that exists is metal, fire, and instinct. You remember reading once about how some Viking axes were used more like swords, quick, deadly, elegant. They weren't just for brute force. They were for warriors who moved fast, fought smart. When the blade is finally shaped, you quench it. Not in water, but in oil this time. It's riskier, but it gives the steel that deep, dark finish and a finer grain. The flames leap up as the hot metal hits the oil, and for a second, it looks like you've summoned a fire spirit right out of the forge. The smell is awful, burnt fat and old leather, but the result is worth it. The blade comes out smooth and deadly, with a ripple pattern just faint enough to hint at something exotic, maybe even mystical. Next comes the haft. You choose ashwood, tough, flexible and light enough for swift strikes. You carve it by hand, shaping the grip to fit naturally in a warrior's palm. No ornate carvings, no flourishes, just function. You wrap the base in leather, not for decoration, but for grip. Real weapons aren't made to be pretty. They're made to end arguments. By nightfall, the axe is done. You hold it in your hands, turning it slowly, feeling the balance. It's perfect. Terrifyingly so. It wants to be swung. It wants to taste blood. You set it gently on the bench and sit down beside it, exhausted and wired at the same time. The apprentice says nothing, just nods once and starts cleaning the tools. He understands the weight of the moment too, but while you're staring at the axe, wondering who exactly you just made this for, a thought creeps in. What if you made something too good? There are stories, superstitions really, about weapons forged so well they became cursed. Not magically cursed, but morally, tainted by the lives they took. There's a tale the old smith once mumbled after one too many ales about a sword that drank too much blood and made its owner mad. You brushed it off at the time, but now, looking at this axe under the flickering forge light, you wonder. The next morning he returns, the warrior, the jarl, the berserker, whatever he is. He walks in, spots the axe and stops. His eyes narrow. Then without a word he lifts it, tests the balance, swings it once with terrifying grace and smiles, not kindly. "This will do," he says. You nod, your mouth dry. He tosses you a leather pouch full of silver coins, far more than you expected. As he turns to leave, he pauses in the doorway. "You have skill," he says. "More than the last smith. His axe broke." He doesn't say what happened to that smith, but you can probably guess. Then he's gone, just like that. No thank you, no blood oath, no explanation, just silence. You sit back down, silver in hand, heart still hammering. The apprentice grins. He liked it. You nod slowly. Let's hope no one else does. Because that axe isn't just a tool, it's a promise, a threat, and you made it. You're starting to learn something that every blacksmith must eventually accept. Fire is a liar. It teases you with its warmth, lulls you into trust, then burns your fingertips the moment you let your guard down. It flashes bright when it's too cool and turns sluggish when you think it's just right. The forge doesn't just want fuel and air, it wants respect, and frankly, a bit of grovelling. Today you're making nails, not glorious shining swords or epic bard-worthy axes, just nails. Hundreds of the ugly little things, bent, stubby, crude, each one a tiny reminder that, while the warrior with the axe might get the glory, it's the nail that holds the world together. A cracked barn beam needs nails. A loose wagon wheel? Nails. A tavern table with one leg shorter than the others? Add a nail. Hammer it in at an angle and pretend you measured it. There's an odd piece in making them. Repetition becomes rhythm. Cut the iron, heat it, hammer the point, flatten the head. Next. Cut, heat, hammer, flatten. You fall into the loop, and it starts to feel like meditation. Somewhere in the process, you stop thinking about time or the aching in your shoulders, or even how much of your own sweat is evaporating into the air right now. Your apprentice, for once, is useful. He keeps the iron coming, lines up blanks, and even manages to copy your motions well enough that about 1 in 3 of his nails isn't a complete disaster. You encourage him with a grunt and a nod. He beams like you just gave him a knighthood. In between hammer strikes, you think about the nature of the work, how this is a craft that blends brute force with weirdly delicate technique. Too much pressure and the head mushrooms, too little and the nail bends when driven into wood. And it's not just about how hard you hit, but when. Timing is everything. The metal has to be the exact shade of glowing red. Not too hot, not too cold. Like porridge, but with a much higher chance of third-degree burns. Your hands are raw by the time you pause for water. The bucket outside the forge is cold and you splash it over your face, letting the chill soak into your skin. Across the square, a young woman leads a goat by a piece of fraying rope. The goat eyes you with the bored contempt only goats can manage. The woman waves, then points to her garden gate and mimes it falling off. Another job to add to the list. Back inside, you notice something strange. One of the tongs isn't gripping right. It slips when you try to twist a piece of iron. You take a closer look and see that the rivet holding it together is loosening. You swear under your breath, because it's your own tool failing during the job. It's like being betrayed by your own child, if your child was made of rust and disappointment. You fix it quickly, but it reminds you, even the smith's tools need the smith. Everything around you is handmade and fallible. There's no warranty here. If it breaks, you fix it, or it stays broken. Simple as that. Later in the afternoon, a local carpenter stops by. He drops off a broken draw knife and asks if you can make it bite again. You admire the phrase. You tell him yes, of course, because that's the thing. Everyone here speaks about tools like they're alive. Axes that bite, hooks that grab, blades that sing. It's poetic and a little unnerving, but it makes sense. If you're going to rely on something every day, it may as well have a personality. You take a break while the forge cools and finally open the little satchel of coins the axe-wielding stranger left behind. Silver. More than you've ever seen in one place. Not huge, not extravagant, but enough to make the local tavern owner raise an eyebrow if you flashed it around. You tuck it into the back wall, behind a loose board only you and the apprentice know about. Your first real payment from a warlord. What a lovely, completely not dangerous milestone. Then, while organising the scrap bin, you find something odd. It's a shard of iron, not unusual, but it's shaped strangely, almost too symmetrical. Like a fragment from something larger, intentional. You ask the apprentice, who shrugs. Been there since I started, he says. Old master said it was a failure of the forge, never explained. You hold it up to the light. It's curved, smooth, and unnaturally black. Not rusted, not pitted, just dark. The way obsidian looks in firelight. It doesn't feel like iron. It's too light. You set it aside, making a mental note to revisit it later. Maybe when there's less work. Maybe when you're brave enough to go poking at forge mysteries without a bucket of holy water nearby. As evening rolls in, you finish the last handful of nails and lay them out in neat rows. They're not identical, far from it. Some are squat, some are slightly twisted, and one looks like it's trying to be a paperclip, but they'll hold. And more importantly, they're yours. You made them, bent metal into order, turned chaos into function. That's a kind of quiet power no one talks about. Dinner is a chunk of hard cheese and bread so stale it could double as a weapon. You eat it anyway, sitting outside the forge with your feet stretched toward the cooling coals. The sky overhead turns deep blue, then purple, then black. Stars appear, one by one, like shy guests arriving late to a party. The apprentice dozes off beside you, head tilted awkwardly against a stack of firewood. You throw a blanket over him. Not because you're soft, but because if he catches a cold, you'll be the one carrying all the ore next week. You stare at the stars for a while longer, thinking of the nails, the axe, the strange shard, and the way people talk about fire like it listens. You wonder if it does, because every time you open that forge door it feels like something in there is waiting. You've gotten used to the heat, sort of. Not in the sense that it's comfortable, it's not, but more like you've accepted that you'll be sweating from places you didn't know had sweat glands for as long as you're alive here. Your body knows the temperature shifts now, the feel of steel as it crosses that invisible line between workable and ruined. But what you still don't fully grasp is what happens before the fire, the alchemy of your materials. Because as it turns out, being a blacksmith isn't just about swinging a hammer and yelling at metal until it obeys. It's about what you're swinging the hammer on in the first place. And today you're being sent to the source. It starts with a visit from a local iron trader, if you can even call him that. He's a squat, grimy man who arrives with 2 donkeys and a cart full of rocks that look like they've been through a war. Bog iron, he says, dumping the rough, lumpy ore at your doorstep like it's something you requested. Best in the region. Dug it myself from a fen 2 days east. Smells like death, but burns like heaven. You thank him, trying not to wrinkle your nose. He's not wrong. The stuff stinks, like sulphur and wet dog. Your apprentice picks up a chunk and licks it. You smack it out of his hand. He shrugs. Wanted to see if it tastes like iron. You ignore that and pay the trader with a handful of coins and 2 hand-forged nails. He doesn't even blink. Apparently nails are currency now. Cool. With your current pile of scrap running low, you decide it's time to learn how this ore becomes usable metal. The process isn't as simple as melt and go. First, you have to roast the ore to remove moisture. You build a low fire in the pit outside the forge and toss in the chunks of bog iron, watching them crackle and split. They hiss, release strange-smelling steam, and slowly darken as the water cooks out. Then comes the smelting, and oh boy, it's not pretty. The smelter isn't some slick contraption. It's a dome of clay, straw, and fire-hardened stone that looks like it was designed by a drunk mole with a grudge. You and the apprentice spend the better part of a day building it up, layering it with charcoal and ore, then sealing it until it resembles a fat, soot-covered beehive. You ignite it with care, feeding the fire with constant air from the bellows. It needs to stay hot, really hot, for hours. The temperature in the forge becomes unbearable. You're not just sweating, you're melting. Your shirt is soaked through, your eyebrows feel singed, and the inside of your nose smells permanently of ash. But slowly, steadily, the fire does its work. The iron begins to separate from the rock. You don't get a gleaming puddle of liquid metal like in the movies. This is bloomery smelting. What you get is a spongy, semi-solid mass called a bloom, filled with slag and impurities. You crack open the smelter the next morning and pull it out using long tongs and a lot of swearing. It's heavier than you expect, still steaming, and it looks like something that fell from space. You take it to the anvil and start the laborious process of compacting it, hammering out slag bit by bit. It's loud, messy, absolutely exhausting. But eventually you start to see real metal emerge. Cohesive, dense, usable iron. You've made your own material, from dirt, with fire. You feel like a caveman who just discovered electricity. The apprentice, to his credit, looks impressed. "So that's how it works," he says, eyes wide. "I thought iron just happened." You laugh. "Nothing just happens," you say, "especially not metal." And that becomes your little mantra for the rest of the day. As you clean up the bloom and shape the usable pieces into bars, you start to realize why some people used to believe blacksmiths were sorcerers. You've just turned mud into something that can kill or build or feed or defend. You've taken raw earth, thrown it into a fire and pulled out the skeleton of civilization. That's not just technical skill, it's almost spiritual. And speaking of spiritual, while sweeping up slag, you notice something the trader left behind. A small cloth pouch, accidentally dropped. You open it expecting coins, maybe tobacco, but no. Inside are 3 small stones, polished smooth and marked with runes. You hold them up to the light, curious. The apprentice takes one look and steps back like you just pulled out a live snake. "Those are finder stones," he says, "for locating ore. Or spirits. Depends who you ask." Of course they are. You gently place them on the workbench and tell him to leave them alone. You, however, spend the next hour trying to decide whether to toss them in the fire or keep one in your pocket. Just in case. You end up doing neither. Instead you hide them behind a shelf and immediately forget which shelf. That feels like the safest option. Later, as the sun sinks low and the forge glows with that warm, golden light that somehow makes even your blisters feel meaningful, you sit back and reflect on what you've done. Not just the nails or the blade edges or the horseshoes, but the iron itself. It's like you've learned a deeper layer of the craft, not just how to shape, but how to make. You clean your tools with care, oil the hinges on the bellows and sweep the floor, not because you're tidy, but because the forge deserves it. You're beginning to see it not just as a workshop, but as a living thing, a temperamental creature made of heat and breath and soot, one that demands sacrifices, time, energy, sometimes blood, but gives back strength in return. That night, as you lie in the same spot you always do, the apprentice mumbles a question into the darkness. "You think the fire knows us now?" You don't answer right away. You're thinking of the finder stones, of the bloom you pulled from the smelter, of the way the flames had danced today, not wild, not erratic, but steady, like they were listening, like they were watching. Finally you whisper back, "I think we know it better, and that's what matters." The fire crackles quietly. Outside, the wind shifts. The forge breathes on. It's market day, and you're already regretting it. From the moment you step out of the forge, the air tastes different. Sharper, dustier, charged with the buzz of people and livestock and far too many conversations happening all at once. It's not that you hate people. You just prefer them one at a time, ideally holding a broken tool and a bag of coins. But today, everyone's out. Traders, farmers, peddlers, mercenaries, kids with sticky hands and no sense of personal space. Market day turns your sleepy village into the medieval version of a pop-up circus. You and your apprentice haul a wooden cart filled with your wares into the heart of the square. It's early, but the place is already alive. Banners flap on strings overhead, stretched between poles and chimneys. A goat is standing on a barrel for reasons no one seems to understand. Someone's yelling about fish. which is impressive considering the nearest body of water is a full day's ride. You set up next to a man selling turnips, who immediately complains that your forge smoke gives the vegetables a taste. You promise to accidentally hammer a nail into his produce if he keeps talking. Your display isn't flashy, just rows of practical things: nails, hinges, small knives, cooking hooks, and a few farming tools. Nothing glamorous. No one's swooning over a well-forged hinge. But you know, these are the things people actually need. You also brought one or two more artistic pieces: a spiral-shaped cloak clasp, a set of decorative wrought-iron tongs, and your favourite, a fire poker shaped like a serpent. These aren't necessities, but they show off your style, your flair. You're hoping someone with deep pockets and shallow taste sees them and falls in love. The first few hours go as expected, slow and full of bartering. A woman with 7 children offers you 3 eggs and a song for a pothook. A man tries to trade you genuine Roman nails that are clearly just old and rusty. Someone offers a goose in exchange for a skinning knife. You almost say yes until the goose hisses at you and tries to bite your ankle. You pass. But then, as the sun climbs higher and the crowd thickens, the real business begins. A merchant from another village buys all your hinges at once. A hunter buys 2 knives and requests another in 2 weeks, something curved and good for skinning deer. An older man from a nearby abbey eyes your serpent poker for a long time, before finally handing over a silver coin and muttering, "My fireplace could use some drama." You're starting to feel the rush now, the weird little thrill that comes from someone valuing what you made with your hands. The clinking of coins in your pouch grows heavier. You offer the apprentice a cut and he declines, saying he's saving up for a sword. You ask him why. He says, just in case. You don't press. Then things get weird. A hooded man stops by your stall and examines everything without speaking. He picks up a knife, tests the weight, tilts it toward the light. Nothing strange about that, except he keeps doing it, over and over. He doesn't ask questions, doesn't make eye contact. He sets the knife down, picks up a nail, stares at it like it's cursed, then sets it down again. He does this with every item moving slow, deliberate, silent. Finally he speaks. "Which of these did you make alone?" You blink. "All of them." He hums, low and sceptical. "No, not all." Before you can respond, he drops a small coin onto the table, a bronze disc with a square hole in the middle, unlike anything you've ever seen, and walks off without another word. You call after him, but he's already gone, melting into the crowd like a puff of smoke. The apprentice picks up the coin and whistles. "That's not local," he mutters. "That's from far." You pocket the coin, but the unease lingers. Something about the man felt off, like he was less interested in what you were selling and more interested in you. The market begins to wind down in the late afternoon. Some vendors pack up their leftover goods. Others stay, turning the square into a drinking ground. Musicians show up, one playing a lute so badly you feel personally offended. Someone starts a fire pit and roasts an entire pig. A group of traders invites you to sit and share a flask of something that burns all the way down. You join them for a bit, laughing more than you expected, swapping forge stories with a smith from a neighbouring town who claims he once made a knife sharp enough to shave a cat. You're not sure why anyone would do that, but you appreciate the dedication. As the sun dips low, you and the apprentice haul your cart back to the forge. You've sold most of your inventory. You're richer than you were this morning, though rich here still means you might be able to afford a second blanket this winter. The forge is still warm from the coals you banked before leaving, and you take a moment to sit in the familiar glow. Your apprentice starts counting coins, muttering about sword prices, and you lean back against the wall, your mind drifting back to the hooded man. His words echo uncomfortably. Not all. Did he mean someone else helped you? Did he sense something about the forge? About whatever's in the forge? You glance over at the spot where you hid the finder stones. Still untouched, still hidden. But something about this day feels like a hinge on a larger door, one you're not sure you're ready to open. As the embers settle and your apprentice snores softly in the corner, you stare into the fire, wondering if the forge will ever be just a forge again, or if it's always been more. There's something about the way the village quiets when the Lord's men arrive that puts you on edge before they even say a word. You're in the forge, mid-swing on a blade that's giving you attitude, when the hoofbeats start. Slow, deliberate, too clean for a farmer's pony. You step outside just in time to see a trio of mounted figures approaching. Their horse is sleek and well fed, their armour polished to a level you'd never bother with. That alone tells you everything. They're not here to work, they're here to remind everyone else who's in charge. The one in front is a knight, or at least dressed like one. His tunic bears a symbol you don't recognise, a red tower over crossed keys, embroidered in fine thread that probably costs more than your entire shop. He surveys the village like he's selecting furniture, then zeroes in on your forge like it personally offended him. When he speaks, his voice is smooth, like a knife you don't realise is in your gut until it's too late. You're the smith. It's not a question, just a statement of ownership. You nod, wiping sweat from your brow, trying to look less covered in soot than you are. He dismounts with the ease of someone used to people holding his stirrup, then strides toward your door. The others hang back, but you feel their eyes on you, watching, measuring. "I need something." "Exceptional," he says, stepping inside and wrinkling his nose at the smell. "Not a peasant's tool. A weapon fit for someone who serves at court." You want to laugh, but you've seen too many necks bent under authority to risk it. "What kind of weapon?" "A longsword," he says, pulling a piece of parchment from his satchel. He unrolls it and shows you a sketch. Not a bad one either. It's detailed, ornate. Crossguards shaped like twin wings, a grip wrapped in dyed leather, and a pommel engraved with what looks like a falcon. The Baron's nephew. His birthday approaches. You will craft this. You study the drawing. It's ambitious. Not just function, but form. He doesn't want a blade that can kill. He wants a blade that impresses while doing it. "I'll need time," you say. "You have 10 days. He folds the parchment sharply, tucks it away, and turns to leave. "We'll return then." No coins, no contract, just expectation. That's how things work when the people giving the orders don't need to worry about things like fare. As they ride away, your apprentice, who had been silently watching from the shadows, mutters, "You're going to die." You nod. Probably. But as much as you hate the pressure, a small, unwelcome spark of excitement lights up in your chest. This is the kind of job that can change your life, or end it, depending on the client's mood. Either way, your forge just got upgraded from local necessity to political pawn. Lucky you. You begin the process that afternoon. First comes the selection of iron. You choose the best bloom from your last smelt, then start the arduous task of refining it further, folding, drawing out, hammering, over and over, not to make it fancy, but to make it strong. You might add some carbon steel into the mix later if you can find the right balance. The blade must be both beautiful and deadly, a delicate contradiction, like a flower made of razors. You stay up late into the night, shaping the blank. The rhythmic clang of your hammer echoes through the village, and no one complains. Everyone knows better than to interrupt a smith on a noble commission. Even the dogs seem quieter. The next day you hike out to the forest's edge to find the right wood for the hilt. You're looking for yew, tough, flexible, with a rich red grain that will polish beautifully. You bring a small hatchet and the apprentice, mostly to carry things and ask annoying questions. He does both with enthusiasm. In the woods, everything feels sharper, like the trees themselves are leaning in to watch. You eventually find a fallen limb that fits your needs, drag it back, and set it aside to dry. You'll shape it when the blade's ready. For now, your focus returns to the metal. Each day, the sword grows. The tang is strong, the bevels are even. You shape the fuller, a central groove that lightens the blade without weakening it, and start working on the crossguard. You carve the wings from wrought iron, reheating and hammering until the shape resembles something vaguely avian. You don't have tools for engraving, so you improvise with a sharpened punch and a lot of patience. On the fourth night, the old smith returns. He hasn't been around since the axe commission, and you'd half assumed he'd disappeared into a ditch. But he walks in like he owns the place, which, technically, he still might, and examines your work without a word. Finally he speaks. "You ever make a sword before?" "No," you say honestly. He grunts. "Then stop acting like you know how. That fuller's too shallow, and your tang's a hair off centre." You want to argue, but he's right. You spend the next 2 hours fixing what he pointed out, while he sits on a stool, sipping something that smells like fermented regret, offering occasional grunts of approval. When you finally look up, he's gone again. No goodbye, just vanished. You work harder after that, smarter too. You redesign the grip, shape the pommel, and even manage to file the falcon into something that won't embarrass you. The sword is taking shape, and so is your reputation, whether you like it or not. The apprentice offers to help with the leather wrapping. He ruins the first attempt, tangles the second, and gets the third halfway decent. You call it a win. By the end of the 9th day, the sword is complete. You polish it with fine sand and ash, then oil it until it gleams. You hold it up in the forge light, and for a moment you almost forget the stakes. It's beautiful, balanced, deadly, and way too important for someone who doesn't even know your name. On the 10th day, the knight returns. He inspects the sword, tests its weight, swings it once, flawlessly, and nods. Acceptable, he says. That's it. No gold, no praise, just acceptable. Then he's gone, and you're left standing there with sweat still running down your spine and the fading echo of his judgment in your ears. The apprentice pats your shoulder. At least he didn't kill you. You nod, breathing out for the first time in what feels like a week. Yet, you add. Because in this world, a blacksmith doesn't just make weapons. He makes enemies. You've just finished repairing a bent scythe blade when you hear church bells echoing through the valley. Slow, solemn, and suspiciously close. That's your first clue something strange is about to happen. The second clue is when your apprentice stops what he's doing, makes the sign of the cross twice, then mutters, "I hate it when they come." You step outside, wiping your hands on your apron, and sure enough, a small procession is winding its way down the muddy lane from the chapel at the hill's crest. 2 altar boys in itchy-looking robes carry incense burners that swing back and forth like censers at a funeral. Behind them is the priest, tall, skeletal, and dressed in full regalia despite the heat. A gold cross glints against his chest. He's flanked by 2 local monks, who look like they've memorized the Bible and forgotten how to blink. They're not here for a blessing. You can feel it in your bones. They're here for an inspection. "Smith," the priest says when he reaches you. No name, just Smith, which in this village is apparently enough. "It has come to our attention that your tools have not been properly sanctified." You blink. "Sanctified?" He nods solemnly. "Iron draws power, both holy and unholy. Unblessed metal is a danger to the soul." You look down at your soot-streaked hands, then at the hammer you've been using for a week straight without spontaneously combusting. "It's just metal." The priest leans forward, voice low and ominous. "So was the spear that pierced the Lord's side." "Right. Of course." Religious guilt with a side of tool-shaming. Before you can respond, he gestures for the monks to enter your forge. You block the door out of instinct. "It's not tidy." He raises a brow. "Neither is sin." That's apparently checkmate. You step aside. They move inside like they're exorcising a demon, examining everything. Your anvil, your tools, even your leftover ore, as though you've been secretly forging devil's toenail clippers. One monk finds the finder stones tucked behind a shelf and lets out a dramatic gasp that might be more appropriate if he'd just discovered a cursed chalice. "These," he declares, "are pagan." You consider pointing out that literally everything in your forge, including the forge itself, predates the current church building. Instead, you say nothing and let the apprentice silently scoop the stones into a bag and tuck them under the workbench. Discretion suddenly feels like a great policy. The priest picks up your hammer, turns it over and frowns. This tool bears no mark of faith. "It's a hammer," you say, "not a sermon." His eyes narrow. "We'll need to bless the forge." Immediately, and just like that, your entire afternoon is hijacked by holy water and chanting. They pour water along the forge's edge, sprinkle ash crosses on your anvil, and take turns muttering Latin phrases that swirl through the smoky air like moths. You're not entirely sure what's being expelled, but the fire in the forge dips low, then suddenly flares brighter than before. The priest looks up, eyes wide. "Did you see that?" "Probably just the wind," you say, trying not to sound nervous. But the look the apprentice gives you says, "That was not the wind." The ceremony lasts the better part of an hour. When it's over, the priest places a small iron crucifix on your workbench. "Keep this visible," he says. "It may deter unfortunate attention." You want to ask what exactly he means by unfortunate, but he's already turning to go, satisfied that your humble blacksmith operation is now a spiritually safe space. The monks follow, and one of them turns back at the doorway, squinting toward the fire like he's trying to read something inside it. He doesn't say a word, just stares, then leaves. That one worries you the most. After they're gone, the forge is quiet. Too quiet. Even the usual crackle of flame seems subdued, like it's sulking. "Do you feel judged?" the apprentice asks. You sigh. "I feel wet. And slightly holier than I'd like." You try to get back to work, but everything feels off. The tools are where you left them, but now they feel different in your hands. Lighter, maybe. Or maybe you're just imagining it. You pick up the hammer, give it a few test swings, and it lands true. But the metal you're working on suddenly resists more than usual, like it doesn't trust you anymore. That night you dream, not of fire or iron, but of whispering. Quiet voices curling around the forge, speaking a language you don't know but feel in your ribs. In the dream, the crucifix on your bench glows red hot. When you reach for it, it burns your palm. You wake up sweating, heart pounding, and immediately check the bench. The crucifix is still there, cold, silent, harmless. The apprentice doesn't mention the dream, but he's unusually quiet all morning. He keeps glancing at the forge, then at the tools, then at you, like he's waiting for something to happen. When nothing does, he finally says, "Maybe they blessed the wrong thing." You glance toward the smelter, toward the spot where you found the strange black shard. You haven't touched it since, haven't even looked at it, but you feel it, like a tiny weight in the corner of your thoughts. You decide to dig it out, just to be sure. You lift the board, find the cloth bundle, unwrap it, and there it is. The black fragment, cold to the touch, light in the hand, and still disturbingly smooth. You hold it up to the light. The crucifix glints on your bench. The two don't belong together, and both of you know it. The apprentice says, "Maybe it's a piece of something." "Yeah," you say quietly. "But what?" You rewrap it, this time in leather, and stash it deeper in the forge behind the coal bin. You don't tell the priest. You don't burn it. You don't throw it away. You should, but you don't. Because deep down, a part of you wants to know where it came from, and why it feels like it's waiting for you to remember. You're halfway through reshaping a ploughshare when your apprentice slams through the forge door like he's being chased by bees and bad decisions. "He's here!" the boy gasps, breathless, pointing down the road. "The smith from Eld Hollow. The one with the golden mail," you raise an eyebrow. "You've heard of him. Everyone within a dozen villages has. His name, if he even has one, shifts depending on who you ask. Some call him Garin of the Gold. Others just call him the Rival. You haven't met him, but you've seen the work. Armour that shines like sunrise. Blades with perfect balance and the kind of edge that makes hair retreat from your arm. There's talk he uses magic, or that he studied under Eastern smiths who forge with dragon bones. Or maybe he's just got better tools and fewer morals. Either way, the air in your forge tightens. You step outside, wiping your hands, and there he is, walking casually into the village like he's arriving at a feast made just for him. He's tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair tied back in a sleek knot. His beard is trimmed, his cloak lined with actual fur. He wears a fine tunic with sleeves rolled just enough to show off his forearms, clean, scarred and strong, and around his neck, a chainmail collar so finely woven it looks like fabric glinting gold in the afternoon sun. He walks like he's on a stage, like everyone's watching, and they are. Behind him trails a cart pulled by a bored-looking mule stacked with gleaming wares. Helm after helm, daggers arranged in neat velvet-lined trays, intricate hinges and buckles, and at least 3 swords that look better than anything you've made on your best day after 8 hours of sleep and divine intervention. He sets up across from your forge, in a spot meant for travellers and vendors passing through. He doesn't even look at you, not once. Your apprentice stands beside you, arms crossed. What do we do? You're not sure. On one hand, it's a free village. People come, people go. Let him sell his flashy blades to lords and braggarts. On the other hand, you feel your blood heating in a way that has nothing to do with the forge fire behind you. By midday, a small crowd's gathered at his stall. Villagers, travellers, even a couple of your regulars, all admiring the artistry of his work. You try not to watch, but it's like staring at a fire across the room, waiting to see if it spreads. He smiles easily, speaks with confidence, even hands out free samples, tiny decorative hooks and trinkets that would have taken you hours to craft. He's showy. Too showy. You realise quickly, he's not just here to sell, he's here to compete. At some point, he finally turns to face you. He lifts a gauntlet from his table, polished to a mirror shine, and tosses it, lightly but deliberately, onto the ground halfway between his stall and your forge. Your apprentice stares at it, then at you. "Is that what I think it is?" You nod. A smith's challenge. Old, obscure, and rare. Not just a flex, but a formal invitation. Let's see who's better. The crowd hushes. You step forward, pick up the gauntlet, turn it over in your hand, then look back at him. I don't make trinkets, you say. He smirks. Good. Neither do I. The challenge is accepted. It's decided there on the muddy village road. 3 days. Each of you will forge a piece, a blade, a tool, a creation of your choosing. It must be functional, it must be original, and it must be judged by someone with no reason to favour either side. The local Reeve volunteers, mostly because he's always wanted to feel important. A travelling tanner offers his barn as neutral ground. The challenge is public, so the whole village will see the results. Your stomach twists. This isn't just pride, it's survival. If he wins, you're just another smoky corner shop. If you win, well, people will know. Back at the forge, you sit in silence, staring into the fire, your mind already racing. What do you make? A sword feels obvious, too predictable. A horseshoe, too practical. You need something that shows what your hands can do when pushed to the edge of exhaustion and instinct. You settle on a knife. Not just any knife, a folding blade. Compact, concealed, and rare. A traveller's blade with moving parts, something that shows your precision and patience, your understanding of mechanics as much as metallurgy. You and the apprentice begin at once. The first night you sketch, not on parchment, you don't have any, but on a flat piece of wood, charcoal in hand, planning the shape, the pivot, the locking mechanism. Every detail counts. You can't just win, you have to outmake him. The second day is all forge and file. The blade is short but curved, with a sharpened belly and a spine that catches the light. You work in near silence, sweat running down your back, your apron heavy with ash. You forge the spine and tang separately, temper them together, and begin fitting the tiny pin that will hold the pivot. By nightfall, your hands are trembling from the effort. Not from fear, just sheer focused fatigue. Day 3 is final shaping and assembly. You polish the blade until it gleams, then shape the handle from dark-stained oak with a small iron inlay, a serpent swallowing its own tail. The apprentice carves it while you finish the blade's edge. His hands have gotten steadier. You don't say it aloud, but he's getting good. When you're done, you hold the knife in your palm. It folds open smoothly, locks with a soft click, and feels like it grew there. It's not loud. It doesn't shine like the rival's pieces, but it's clever, dangerous, yours. The judging happens in the tanner's barn with the whole village crowded around. Your rival reveals his piece, a double-edged dagger in a gilded scabbard, etched with runes and crowned with a ruby in the pommel. The crowd ooze, of course they do. Then you present yours, no jewels, no gold, just a blade that folds with mechanical grace and slides into a carved wood sheath that fits it like a secret. The Reeve tests them both. He slices through cloth, through cured leather, through rope. He nods, twice, thinks far too long, then clears his throat. They're both impressive, he says. But only one has movement. He turns to you and nods. You won. The crowd claps. The rival bows, graciously, annoyingly, but his eyes are tight. He didn't expect this. You return to your forge, exhausted and covered in grime. But for once you don't feel tired. You feel like a blacksmith who knows exactly what he is. Not every job makes you feel like a warrior poet forging blades for kings. Some jobs are heavier, duller, grimy in a way that gets under your fingernails and into your spine. You wake up the morning after the smithing challenge, still sore, still sorely smug, but reality doesn't care. There's already a man at your door with a look of desperation and mud streaked up to his thighs. He doesn't knock, just barges in like he owns the place, which, to be fair, if your rent was due, he might. I need the mill wheel fixed, he says. Snapped 2 teeth off. Water's rushing too fast. You blink, still chewing on the end of a bit of stale bread. The wheel, he nods, the big one. You sigh. You've avoided that thing for weeks. The village's water mill sits at the edge of the woods, where the river rushes past with the urgency of unpaid taxes. The wheel, massive, clunky, and half-rotten, is powered by the current and in turn powers the grinding of grain, the sharpening of tools, and the occasional idiotic prank involving children and buckets. You knew the wheel would break eventually. Everything breaks, but now it's your problem. So you gather your tools, kiss your free time goodbye, and follow the man down the winding trail toward the river. Your apprentice tags along carrying a coil of rope and a jug of water, muttering, "We're gonna die," every 5 minutes. Which, to be fair, is not completely unreasonable. When you arrive, the problem is obvious. One of the iron teeth on the outer rim has sheared off entirely, and another is so bent it looks like it's trying to escape. The wooden paddles creak and groan with every turn, and the whole structure leans slightly to one side like it's got a hangover. The wheel is still turning, but with every spin it threatens to chew itself apart. Can't shut it off, the miller says. River's too high. If it jams, it floods the whole lower path. You stare at the contraption, calculating. The broken section will rotate into reach about every 30 seconds. That gives you a window, a narrow, reckless, probably unwise window. You strip down to your tunic, lash a rope around your waist and wade into the mill pond. The water's cold enough to offend your soul. You clamber up onto the slick wooden scaffolding, clutching your tongs and repair plates, waiting for your moment. When the wheel groans past again, you leap, catching onto the frame like a rat clinging to a rolling barrel. This is fine, everything's fine. Your apprentice hands you tools between wheel rotations, timing each pass like it's a festival game. You wedge a replacement plate where the broken tooth used to be, hammering it into place with one hand while the other grips the wooden frame. Water sprays in your face. The wheel shifts unexpectedly and you nearly lose a boot. You shout something profane, and a nearby farmer walking by with a cow covers his ears like you've committed a mortal sin. But eventually, miraculously, the repair holds. You secure the second plate, reinforce the adjacent slats, and jump off just before the wheel reaches the drop-off where the river starts pulling harder. You land in the shallows, soaking wet, bruised and half-frozen, but victorious. The miller claps you on the back with the enthusiasm of a man who thinks this counts as payment. It doesn't. Back at the forge, you strip off your wet clothes and throw them near the fire to dry. Your apprentice tosses you a clean rag, and you wrap it around your wrist, which is swelling from where the wheel bit you during your daring acrobatic performance. That, the boy says with reverence, was insane. You grunt and drink half a flask of something alcoholic enough to count as medicine. Add that to the list, you mutter. Because the truth is, blacksmithing isn't just standing at the anvil shaping noble swords while admiring your own reflection in a polished blade. Most of the time, it's fixing the world's broken bones, its carts, its hinges, its grain mills, and doing it in rain, or fire, or in this case, a literal river. Later that afternoon you find yourself alone in the shop. The apprentice has gone to barter for meat pies with a handful of bent nails and misplaced confidence. The forge is hot, but the village is quiet. You clean your tools, realign your tongs, and inspect the cracked rivet on your favourite hammer. That's when you find it. Tucked behind the workbench, wedged between two floorboards, is a folded piece of cloth. You don't remember putting it there. When you pull it free and unwrap it, you find an iron gear. Small, well-tooled, and unlike anything you've ever made. It's engraved with a symbol, a perfect spiral, not unlike the one on the amulet your apprentice gave you weeks ago. But this one is sharper, more precise, mechanical. It doesn't look like something from this village. It doesn't look like something from anywhere you've seen. You hold it in your palm, turning it over. There's no rust, no wear, like it's waiting to be used, not displayed. The moment is interrupted by the sound of hooves. Again, you glance outside. A courier rides past, tossing a parchment at your door without stopping. It flutters to the ground like a wounded bird. You pick it up, unfurl it, and squint at the uneven script. It's a summons. The Baron wants to speak with you, not a request, a command. 3 days' time. Your chest tightens. It's either a reward for the sword or a reckoning. The apprentice returns, holding a meat pie half-eaten and covered in dog fur. He sees the paper in your hands and sighs. You're not going to say no, are you? You shake your head. Didn't think so, he mutters. Better start sharpening everything. You slip the gear into your pouch, the spiral cold against your leg. The forge crackles beside you almost comfortingly. You've fixed broken blades, shattered wheels, and nearly drowned in a pond. But this feels like the beginning of something that can't be hammered back into shape. It starts with smoke. Not the usual kind. The heavy, familiar blacksmith's fog that clings to your clothes and sinks into your skin like a second, smellier layer. But the thick, acrid kind that chokes the sky. You wake to shouts, not birds. You run outside barefoot, the dirt cold beneath your heels, and the whole eastern edge of the village is glowing with an orange flicker you've only ever seen from inside your forge. The forge isn't burning. Someone else's house is. You're still blinking sleep from your eyes when the apprentice shouts, "The cooper's roof! He says the fire jumped from the chimney." You don't ask questions, you just move. The air is already blisteringly hot as you run up the muddy path. The cooper's cottage is small, thatch-roofed, and absolutely engulfed. Villagers are forming a ragged line to the well, hauling buckets like ants in a panic. One man trips and spills his water, another curses and throws a wool blanket into the flames, which flares and vanishes almost instantly. The cooper is on his knees, sobbing, arms round his wife. They got out. That's all that matters, for now. But then someone yells something that freezes your blood. "The fire's heading for the stables!" You whip around. A sudden gust fans the flames toward the adjacent building, a wooden structure filled with hay, dry as dust after weeks without rain. Worse, there are horses inside. You sprint toward it without thinking. The roof is already smoking by the time you throw open the gate and plunge into the dark. Inside, the horses are screaming. The smoke is so thick you can't see more than a few feet ahead, but you know their shapes, their snorting panic. You grab a bridle, yank one of the horses toward the open air. It rears, almost catches you in the chin with a hoof, but you manage to drag it out. Someone grabs the reins and leads it away. 2 more to go, you stumble back in, eyes stinging, lungs aching, and this time you don't walk. You feel your way forward, hand on flank, pushing the next animal toward the door. The flames haven't reached the straw yet, but the air itself is burning. You haul the second horse out by its mane, coughing so hard your chest feels like it's going to tear in half. The third doesn't make it. You try. You really do. But a wooden beam gives out before you reach the last stall, crashing down in a blizzard of sparks. The noise is deafening. The heat kicks you back like a wall. You hear the horse scream once, then nothing. You stumble outside, your tunic scorched at the sleeves, your hands blistered and shaking. The stables are already collapsing. The apprentice finds you, throws a blanket over your shoulders and helps you sit. For a while, all you can do is watch. Flames eat everything with the steady hunger of a beast that doesn't know when to stop. And still, miraculously, the forge stands, somehow untouched. A few stray embers have drifted its way, but nothing caught. You wonder if it's luck, or if the forge simply refuses to burn, like it knows it's not finished with you yet. By dawn, the fire's out. What remains of the cooper's house is a pile of smoking ash. The stables are nothing but charred beams and twisted iron brackets, some of which, ironically, you made. The villagers gather in silence, eyes hollow with exhaustion and soot. No one speaks, not even to thank you. That's how things work out here. Everyone does what they can, and if you're lucky, no one dies. You don't get applause for saving half a stable. You get ash in your lungs and a week's worth of work fixing the pieces. You go back to the forge, wrap your hands in wet rags, and sit by the fire that didn't betray you. Your apprentice cleans your tools without being asked. For once, neither of you jokes. Later, while scrubbing soot off your arms, you notice something strange. On the back of your right hand, just above the wrist, the skin has a faint, jagged burn, not from the fire itself, but a shape, like a brand, a spiral, faint, barely there, but unmistakable. You don't say anything. That night, a group of elders meets in the tavern. You're not invited, but everyone knows what they're talking about. The fire, the damages, how to keep it from happening again. There are whispers of banning open forges. A few mention the old ways and smoke devils. You hear your name once or twice, never loud, always muttered. You sit in the dark beside your hearth, watching the fire flicker, replaying the events in your mind. You should be proud. You saved lives. You prevented the entire eastern lane from turning into kindling. But all you can think about is that burn on your hand. That symbol. The same one on the finder stone. The same one on the gear you tucked away. Coincidence? Probably. Hopefully. The apprentice joins you. His clothes still smell like smoke and his face is smudged with ash. He says nothing for a long time. Then quietly, "The forge didn't burn." You nod. He leans in closer. "Even the old smith's forge burned once, you know that. You didn't. But now you do." Outside, the village begins to settle again. People sweep ash from doorsteps. Children carry buckets of clean water to their parents. No one talks much. The memory of fire lingers longer than smoke. You sleep fitfully, and when you dream, it's of sparks, falling like stars, landing on your skin and etching shapes into your bones, and somewhere in the distance, behind it all, a soft grinding noise, like gears turning, waiting. You wake in the dead of night, not to a sound, but to silence so complete it feels like pressure. The forge isn't snoring its usual embered breath. The apprentice isn't mumbling in his sleep. Even the village dogs, which normally bark at dust motes, are quiet. You sit up slowly, your body still sore from the fire the day before, and feel the cool air touch your skin like a warning. Something is wrong, not in the loud, obvious way, but in the stillness that comes before something happens. You throw on your tunic, grab a lantern and cross the dirt floor. The forge is cool. That's the first alarm bell. You bank the coals properly before bed, like always, and they should still be glowing. But the hearth is black, the air cold, no smoke, no warmth, just dead. You poke the coals with a stick. Nothing. Not even a spark. Like the fire didn't go out, it was taken. The apprentice stirs and sits up, rubbing his eyes. "Why is it cold?" he asks, groggy. You don't answer. You're already reaching for the gear, the strange spiral-marked iron disc you found after the mill repair. It's still hidden beneath the tools, wrapped in leather, but when you touch it now, the metal is warm. Not hot. Warm. As if it's been absorbing heat from somewhere else. Somewhere not here. "I think I'm going to be sick," the apprentice says suddenly, eyes wide. He stares at the forge. It feels like it's watching. You grab your coat and the pouch where you've stashed the finder stones, the ones the trader left behind, the ones you swore to ignore. But ignoring them feels like walking past a locked door that's slowly opening anyway. You light the lantern and make your way outside, the apprentice trailing behind like a sleepwalker. The night sky is a smear of deep purple. The moon hangs low, heavy and yellow, like a burnt coin. You don't speak as you walk, just follow some instinct, like iron drawn to a magnet. You head to the edge of the woods, to a place you've never needed to visit before, the old quarry. It's a scar carved into the side of a low hill, overgrown and half forgotten. The locals say it was sealed off after too many workers fell or went missing or simply came back. Wrong. You never had a reason to come here, until now. As you approach, the wind picks up, slow and circular, not gusting through the trees but around you. The lantern flickers but holds. The stones in your pouch vibrate, like pebbles in a distant drum. You reach the edge of the quarry and see it, something faint glowing in the dark, a ring of symbols barely visible on the rock face, spirals, curves, marks that echo the ones on the gear. You don't know what you're doing, that's a fact, but your hands act anyway. You pull the finder stones out, hold them in your palm, and the glow strengthens. You take out the gear. As soon as you do, the stones click together like magnets snapping into place. A beam of light, not blinding, just strange, flares briefly from the centre of the ring, then disappears. Silence returns. The apprentice whispers, "We're going to die here." You whisper back, "Probably." But nothing else happens. Not yet. You wait. The stones cool. The gear dims. The light's gone. But something lingers in the air. An awareness. Like the quarry is now aware of you. Back at the forge, the coals are still dead. You relight them, cautiously, and they catch. But the fire that returns is different. Slower to build, darker at the edges. Not in colour, but in feeling. The heat rolls over you with a hum instead of a roar. And the first time you swing the hammer that morning, it rings differently. Lower, heavier, like the sound has roots now. You decide to test it. You take a half-finished blade, just scrap, something you'd normally reforge, and heat it. When you strike, the metal yields immediately, like it wants to be shaped. The colour stays in the steel longer, more evenly. You hammer it into a knife, edge it, polish it, and test it against wood. It cuts through like butter. You do another, then another. Every strike is easier, every heat is more efficient. You feel stronger, not just in your arms, but in your sense of the metal. You can feel imperfections before they form. You know where to strike. It's exhilarating and terrifying. The apprentice says nothing, but you catch him watching you from the corner of the forge. Like he's waiting for you to change into something else. Maybe you already have. That night he finally asks, "Did we wake something up?" You poke the fire with a rod, watch the coals glow a little too red. "No," you say. "I think it was already awake." And just like that, the forge feels different. Not haunted, not cursed, just occupied. Like a roommate you never see but know is always home. You think about the old smith, about the bag of teeth, the charm under the floor, the rumours, the hush around the forge's history. This isn't just a place for iron and fire, it's a doorway. But to where and why it opened now, you don't know.
Not yet, but the forge is listening. and it wants you to keep going. There's a strange energy humming through the village this morning, part relief, part chaos, and entirely fueled by barrels of mead and zero inhibitions. You wake to the sound of laughter echoing off thatched roofs, dogs barking in chorus, and a badly tuned lute trying its best to murder a folk song. Your apprentice sits cross-legged on the floor, halfway through weaving a crown out of straw and sheep wool. He looks up, eyes wide with joy. "It's the feast of Saint Ardent," he says, as if you've forgotten your own birthday. You blink at him. "Is that today?" He nods. "The one day the Lord doesn't collect taxes and no one's allowed to complain." You sit up. Your back cracks in 3 different keys, and your fingers are still stained from yesterday's forge work. You smell like iron, ash, and that weird faint scent the fire's been giving off since the night you walked to the quarry. But today, no one seems to care. Outside, someone's painted the village well bright red with berry juice. A chicken wearing a wreath of flowers pecks at the mud near your door. A man runs by naked except for boots, holding a meat pie and yelling about divine inspiration. The village is officially unhinged, and honestly, it's a welcome change. You step out into the morning light, stretching, and immediately someone shouts your name. You turn, and before you can even respond, a flagon is tossed into your hands. Warm, slightly sloshed mead sloshes over your knuckles. "Drink up, Smith," a woman cackles. She's older, wrapped in a shawl woven with colored thread, and somehow balancing a cake on her head. "Can't swing a hammer if you're not wobbling." You raise the flagon and take a sip. It's sweet, fermented, dangerous. The apprentice appears beside you, already gnawing on a roast leg of something he probably didn't pay for. "You're not forging today, right?" You shake your head. Even the forge needs a day off. And for the first time in what feels like forever, you believe it. The whole square has transformed. Someone's erected a maypole in the center, and children are wrapping it in streamers like it owes them money. Musicians strum badly but with enthusiasm, and a group of old men are deep in a contest involving throwing rotten turnips at a barrel. There's food everywhere. Flatbread cooked over open flames, spiced apples, salted fish, cakes smeared with honey. You trade a small iron brooch, something you made just to test out a new punch technique, for a plate of roast duck, and a smile from the baker's daughter, who now has an eyebrow piercing made from one of your bent nails. She winks. You almost choke on your mead. The apprentice disappears into the crowd, pulled away by a group of other teens dressed in animal skins and mud. Apparently, this is part of a tradition involving mock battles, a stolen pig, and someone getting thrown into the river. You, meanwhile, are kidnapped by the Tanner's family, specifically the Tanner's very loud uncle, who insists that the only way to honor Saint Ardent is to drink 6 cups of sour wine and then try to recite the village's founding myth in under 30 seconds. You fail, spectacularly, and yet somehow it becomes the highlight of the afternoon. Around midday, someone strikes a drum, a proper deep-skin drum that reverberates through the whole square, and the crowd goes quiet. An elder steps forward, beard braided with twine, holding a staff carved with animals and symbols. He begins the telling, a yearly tradition where the village retells its most important stories. Most are familiar: how Saint Ardent tamed the wild ox, how the mill was built from stone dragged by 12 drunk masons, how the first blacksmith forged a nail that never bent. That last one is new. You perk up. "Never bent?" you mutter. The elder continues, "And the nail was so strong it held the very bones of the earth together. But it was stolen by a jealous smith from the north, who tried to replicate its strength but only created monsters. Fire-born creatures, shaped like men, but hollow inside. Ever since, the forge must be watched, because when the fire burns too clean, it remembers." You blink. The villagers chuckle, treating it as myth. The children laugh and toss petals at the elder's feet. But you're not laughing, because your fire's been burning very clean lately. Later, as the sun starts to dip and the mead starts to really crawl up behind people's eyes, someone declares, "It's time for the hammer toss." It's exactly what it sounds like. See how far you can throw a blacksmith's hammer without breaking your wrist or your pride? They call your name to compete. You wave them off. "I've already thrown mine," you say, thinking of all the work behind you. The sword for the baron, the mill wheel, the blade for the berserker, the knife that won you the challenge. All of it was you, casting yourself into the fire again and again. Instead, you sit back and let someone else try. The wheelwright wins, somehow, after spinning twice and chucking the hammer into a haystack. The crowd roars. Someone throws flower petals. A pig steals half a pie. It's all very dignified. By nightfall, the village square glows with torchlight. People dance in circles, stomp the earth, sing songs they only halfway remember. You're pulled into the rhythm, awkwardly at first, then with increasing ease. The baker's daughter grabs your hand. Her laugh is sharp and wild, and her cheeks are smudged with flour. You spin, trip, recover, and laugh so hard your ribs hurt. For a moment, everything feels normal. No mysterious gears, no fire spirits, no cursed iron, just music and sweat and soft dirt beneath your feet. But as the night deepens, the fire at the center of the square grows taller. The flames dance higher than they should, and the embers, somehow, rise downward. You rub your eyes, blink, and the fire is normal again. Only now, there's a shape at the edge of the crowd, a figure, cloaked, watching. You step forward to get a better look, but they vanish, gone. Like smoke. You ask the apprentice, covered in mud, wreath on his head, if he saw anyone. He shakes his head. "No one strange here tonight," he says. "Well, no extra strange." You smile, but it doesn't reach your eyes. You walk back to the forge under a sky painted with stars, your ears still ringing with laughter and music. You sit by the cold hearth and run your hand over the workbench. There's a small mark there, a spiral. You didn't carve it, but it's there now. And the forge, it hums softly, like it enjoyed the feast, too. The rumors ride in on the wind before the soldiers do. You hear them whispered at the well, muttered between merchants, traded like clumps of gossiping flour over bread counters. War. Not here yet, but close. Too close. First, it was just a far-off skirmish between lords with more titles than sense, something you could ignore like a bad dream. Then came the news that a southern village was burned, maybe by bandits, maybe by soldiers pretending not to be. Then a caravan disappeared on the old Roman road. And now, people are carrying blades again. Not just farmers' knives, weapons, sharp ones. You feel it in the forge, in the orders. They change. Gone are the hinges, plowshares, and pothooks. Now it's spearheads, iron tips for arrows, short swords, buckles strong enough to hold armor straps. The air smells different too, not just of coal and oil, but fear. A quiet, creeping fear no one names out loud. Your first real sign that trouble's coming, trouble you can't joke away, arrives on horseback. 6 riders, 1 flag. They bear the Baron's sigil, the same lord who once demanded that gleaming sword for his nephew. But these aren't birthday messengers. They're recruiters. The lead soldier dismounts in front of your forge, kicks mud from his boots, and strides in like he's inspecting an outpost. He's wiry, weathered, and missing half an ear. A jagged scar runs down one cheek like lightning frozen in skin. "You're the smith?" he asks. You nod. Of course you are. "We need blades. Standard lengths. Single edge. Strong. Fast to produce." You glance toward your current project. A delicate fireplace tool for the apothecary's wife, shaped like a swan. The soldier snorts. "You can make art later." He tosses a pouch of coin on your bench. "Enough to buy a week's worth of meat and charcoal. More if you make it fast." He leaves just as quickly, boots smearing soot as he goes. You watch him ride off, then turn to the apprentice. He doesn't ask what the new job is. He's already cleaning the sword molds. You work that night without stopping. The forge blazes. Your hammer doesn't ring. It pounds. The noise isn't music. It's marching. You feel like you're shaping echoes of battles not yet fought. You make 5 blades before dawn. Ugly ones. No flourishes, no names, just tools for killing. Each one cools in the quench with a hiss that sounds a little too much like breath. The apprentice doesn't sleep either. You catch him once, holding one of the blades, testing the weight. His grip is clumsy, too tight. He notices you watching and sets it down quickly. "Just curious," he mutters. You don't lecture him. You just say, if you don't respect the weapon, it won't respect you. He nods. But you can see something behind his eyes, a thought he hasn't voiced yet. The next day, the soldier returns, collects the blades, doesn't check them, just trusts they'll kill. He asks for more. Double. You ask what they're for. He squints at you. Does it matter? You want to say yes. You want to say everything about this matters. But instead, you nod. He leaves a second pouch, heavier than the first. Word spreads fast. Suddenly, people you've never seen before show up at your forge with quiet voices and serious eyes. They ask for knives. For hunting, they claim. But no one's hunting rabbits with this kind of steel. One man wants a short axe that can be strapped under a cloak, another a set of throwing blades. You ask no questions. You take their coins. And every time you finish a weapon, that mark, the spiral, shows up again. Not etched by you, not stamped. Just there, in the metal, faint, subtle, like a shadow left by light. You polish it away the first few times, but it always returns. One morning, you find a single arrowhead on your bench. It wasn't there the night before. You didn't make it, but it's perfect, balanced, wickedly sharp. You test it against leather. It pierces clean through. You show the apprentice. He doesn't touch it. "We didn't make that," he says. "No," you agree. "We didn't." He asks, "Then who did?" You look toward the forge. It crackles, quiet, but somehow listening. Days pass, then weeks. The orders keep coming, and every time the weapons get easier to shape. You barely have to think. Your hands move on their own. It's like the iron wants to become something dangerous. It responds faster, glows hotter, stays malleable longer. You used to fight the metal. Now it's like you're just guiding it, and that's what scares you most. One evening, the baker's son, a sweet, round-faced boy who once asked you to fix his wooden toy, comes in, eyes dark, shoulders square. He wants a dagger. "Why?" "In case the soldiers don't come back." You try to explain that war is for warriors, not children, that he should stay close to his family, that this isn't a game. He listens. Then he holds out a coin, one you made. "I still want it," he says. You don't take the coin. You tell him to go home. But later, after the forge is closed, you make the blade anyway, just in case. You hide it beneath a floorboard. You don't know who you're trying to protect anymore. That night, you dream of a battlefield, ash in the sky, blades in the dirt. You're there, hammer in hand, walking through the silence. The dead wear no faces, but each of them clutches a weapon you made, and they're all marked. Spirals, over and over. The forge whispers as you wake. You can't understand the words, but you feel them, calling you to keep going, to make more, to feed the fire. He shows up just after sunrise, muddy and out of breath, as if the ground itself had spit him out for being too fast. You're pulling your first blade from the coals, your hands already coated in soot and sleep still crusted in the corners of your eyes. The apprentice stumbles through the forge door, his tunic soaked with dew, his feet bare, and his hair pointing in all directions like he fought a windmill and lost. "I want to apprentice," he gasps. You frown. You already are an apprentice. He shakes his head. Not me. Him. That's when you see the figure behind him. Just a shadow at first, lingering at the forge's edge. When he finally steps into the light, you understand why the boy is so breathless. This new kid isn't from the village. His clothes are too fine. His boots too clean. His skin is pale, the kind of pale that says, I don't work with my hands, but I want to look like I could. His eyes are sharp, bright, too bright. You've seen that look before, on nobles pretending to be humble, or spies pretending to be merchants. You squint at him. You lost. He smiles politely. No, I'm here to learn. You cross your arms. You don't smell like a smith. He smiles wider. I will. The apprentice steps between you, eager. He read all about forges. In books. You raise a brow. And that's supposed to help him when the tongs melt to his fingers? I've studied metallurgy, the boy says, completely unbothered. Alloy balances. Ore qualities. Bellows efficiency ratios. I can read Latin, too. You pause. Books. Latin. Ore theory. That's not apprentice talk. That's scribe talk. Or maybe alchemist. Or worse, church-trained. You gesture toward the workbench. Pick up that hammer. He does. Now swing it. 10 times. Aim for the center of the anvil. He hesitates for half a second, just long enough to betray that he's never lifted anything heavier than a goblet. But to his credit, he swings. Once, then again. By the 3rd time, his arms are shaking. By the 5th, he's sweating. By 10, he's panting like a chased hare. You nod. Congratulations. That's the easiest thing you'll do today. He leans on the anvil, trying not to vomit. You toss him a rag and turn back to your fire. Name, you ask. Lazarick? Of course it is. The apprentice sits beside him, wide-eyed. He says he ran away from the abbey. Doesn't want to be a scribe. You glance over. Because blacksmithing's easier? No, Lazarick says. Because it's real. And there it is. You don't trust him, not yet. But something in that answer feels true. You've had too many people talk at you, preach at you, try to turn fire into metaphor. This kid wants to burn his hands on purpose. You can work with that. So you give him the worst job in the forge, charcoal duty. He hauls heavy sacks from the pit behind the forge, coughing, sweating, stumbling over every root. You don't go easy on him. You tell him exactly how fast he has to move, and you don't flinch when he drops the first sack and it explodes in a cloud of dust that blacks out the sun. The apprentice watches this with a mixture of awe and smugness. By midday, Lazarick's shirt is stuck to his back. His hands are blistered. His soft boots are scuffed and stained, and he's clearly wondering if he's made a terrible mistake. Still want to learn? You ask. He nods. Doesn't say a word. Good. You don't teach him anything advanced. Not yet. Just how to clean the bellows, how to watch the flame without blinking, how to listen for the iron's change in pitch when it's ready to shape. But he watches everything, absorbs it like ash into cloth. And that night, as you're locking up, he asks something strange. What do you know about the spiral? You freeze. It's not the way he says it, it's when. At the end of a long, brutal day, casually, like he's asking about the weather. Why? You ask. He shrugs. It's in the Abbey's texts. Not common, usually scratched in margins. They said it was a smith's mark, old, dangerous, banned. You don't answer, because you're not sure what to say. You saw it again just this morning. On a blade you hadn't finished etching. On a sheet of folded steel, unmarked 1 minute, spiraled the next. You walk to the back wall, pull down the gear, show it to him. His face changes, just a little. You've seen this before, you say. He nods. In a vault, under the abbey. One of the older monks called it the hinge of fate. You chuckle. Dramatic. He shrugs. He also thought the world was a wheel and the forge was its center. You look at the gear again. You're starting to wonder if he was wrong. That night, you lie awake longer than usual. Lazarick sleeps on a straw mat near the apprentice, curled up like someone used to small spaces. He doesn't snore, doesn't fidget. He's too composed. You don't trust it, but you do trust the forge, and that's what worries you. Because lately, it's been warming faster, staying hot longer, almost like it wants to be used. And now with Lazarick here, this clever, strange boy with Abbey knowledge and tired hands, it's warmer than ever. You fall asleep with the gear in your hand, and you dream of fire wheels turning in the dark, spinning faster, spiraling inward, dragging everything with them. You wake to find the coals already glowing. No one lit them. And Lazarick is standing in the dark, watching the fire, smiling. He arrives at midday, looking like he stepped out of a fever dream, cloaked in black despite the sun, face wrapped in a foreign scarf, horse draped with packs and saddlebags that creak under their own mystery. He's not tall, but he carries himself like a man who knows that distance and obscurity are more powerful than any sword. When he dismounts in front of your forge, he doesn't speak. He just stands there, waiting for you to acknowledge that whatever you're doing, hammering out a chisel, inspecting a stack of raw bloom iron, is now less important than him. You meet his eyes. They're gray, stormy, too calm. People usually arrive needing something. Shoes for their mule, a bent hinge replaced, a quick fix for a cracked blade. But this man doesn't look like someone who fixes things. He looks like someone who removes problems. Eventually he speaks. I need you to make me something. His voice is low, clipped, and clearly not local. A coastal dialect, maybe, or farther. He removes a small wooden box from one of his saddlebags and places it on your workbench with a thud. It's no bigger than a loaf of bread, sealed with black wax and a twisted bit of cord made from some fine, fibrous material you can't place. You eye the box. What is it? A guide, he says. The measurements are inside. Of what? He hesitates, just for a second. Tools. For a commission, custom fittings. You've made custom tools before. Strange little gadgets for foreign traders, spiral-cut chisels for tinkerers who swear by moonlight-tempered steel. But this feels different. Too vague, too polished, too quiet. You open the box slowly. Inside is a set of diagrams, neatly drawn on thick vellum. Precise mechanical shapes, levers, hinges, hooks, but not hooks for hanging pans or tools. These are slender, spined, and curved like the ribs of some small metal creature. One drawing shows a joint that can rotate 360 degrees. Another shows a gear almost identical to the one you found weeks ago, hidden in your forge. In the corner of each diagram is the spiral. You say nothing. Just stare. The man watches you. You can make them? You nod slowly. What are they for? He doesn't blink. That's not your concern. Of course it isn't. He lays down a heavy purse, more coin than most villagers see in a year, and says, I'll return in 3 days. Then he mounts his horse and rides off, cloak fluttering like smoke behind him. You stare after him long after he disappears. The apprentice comes over, frowning. That man smells like salt and lies, he mutters. And why did his horse not poop once the whole time? You don't answer. Instead, you study the diagrams again, and the spiral. Always the spiral. Lazarick, the book-reading apprentice, leans over your shoulder. These are refined, he says. These drawings. They're made by someone who understands more than just smithing. Look here. This isn't for a weapon. It's for a mechanism. You narrow your eyes. What kind of mechanism? He traces the curve of the smallest gear with one finger. Something that moves, but not by hand. You don't ask how he knows that. Because he's right. You feel it too. This isn't for a simple hinge. These are pieces of something larger, something hidden. Still, coin is coin. And you've made weirder things for less. You begin work immediately. The forge welcomes you like an old friend, flames flaring high, smoke curling like arms. The metal you select is the dark stuff, the iron that came from the bloom you smelted near the beginning, the batch that felt different, tighter, like it had structure before you gave it one. Each piece you forge responds like it's eager to belong to something again. You shape the curved hook, you drill the tiny holes, you grind and polish the gear with charcoal and water until it spins without resistance. These aren't weapons, but they feel sharp. And with each piece you finish, the forge burns hotter. Lazarick watches from the side, sketching in the dirt with a coal fragment. "I've seen something like this," he says. "Not exactly, but close. In an old text from the eastern provinces, diagrams for an artificial limb." You pause. "Like a hand?" He nods. "Sort of. Except it wasn't for humans." You look up. "What then?" He shrugs. "The scribe stopped writing before the last page. Just said, 'I heard the gears turn, and I fled.'" Of course he did. By the second night, the pieces are finished. You lay them out on the bench. 5 strange tools, delicate and perfect. A gear, a hook, a slender clasp, a spined rod, and a plate etched with the spiral, not by you again. Just there. You polish them until they shine, then wrap them in oilcloth and tuck them back into the wooden box. And wait. The stranger returns exactly on time. Doesn't knock, just walks in, takes the box, opens it, inspects the pieces, and nods once. "You did well," he says. You ask him again, "What are they for?" He looks at you, long enough to make you regret asking. Then finally, to wake something. Before you can question it, he leaves. That night, you can't sleep. You sit by the forge, staring into the coals. They're too hot. You didn't stoke them, you didn't bank them, but they're alive, shifting with shadows that shouldn't be there. The apprentice dozes against a sack of charcoal. Lazarick writes in his journal, muttering things in Latin. You hear the word spiraculum, breathing place. Outside, the wind picks up. You close your eyes and hear a click. Not loud, just a soft, metallic sound, like something being assembled. And from somewhere deep in the forge, beneath the bricks under the floor, you hear a second click, then a third, then silence. The forge is holding its breath, and so are you. The first thing you notice is the cold. Not the gentle chill of early morning dew or the kind that creeps in during the edge of autumn, but a deep, pressing cold that doesn't make sense. The forge is lit. The coals are glowing. Your tools are warm to the touch. But the air tastes like stone, like dust that hasn't moved in centuries. You exhale, and it fogs. Inside the forge, with the fire burning strong, you try to ignore it. You try to tell yourself it's just dawn, just nerves, just the stranger and his tools, and the quiet click you thought you heard last night. But the moment you open the coal bin, you freeze. Because the black shard, the one you buried days ago, the strange, smooth piece of not quite iron, has moved. It's not in the corner where you left it. It's not tucked under ash and grit. It's centered now, resting perfectly in the middle of the bin, like something placed it there with intent. It doesn't look different, but when you reach for it, your fingers tingle. Not burn, not sting, just buzz, like holding the edge of a storm. You wrap it again, more tightly this time, and wedge it deep behind a rack of old molds, hoping that distance means safety. The fire flares when you walk away. That's when Lazarick speaks. He's sitting on the floor of the forge, legs crossed, journal open, scribbling furiously with a bit of charcoal. He hasn't spoken since dawn, and you assumed he was just sleep-deprived or trying to decode another of his monastic mysteries. But now, he says, without looking up. This forge used to belong to Calric the Red. You pause. Who? Master Smith. About 2 generations ago. Known for horseshoes that never wore out, blades that sang when swung, and for disappearing under strange circumstances. You frown. That's not in the village records. Lazarick finally looks up. No, it wouldn't be, but it's in the Abbey's restricted texts. Of course it is. He was said to have forged a crown for a noble, Lazarick continues. Not a war crown, a ceremonial one. But the thing changed. The Baron who wore it went mad, spoke in riddles, started carving spirals into his skin. Thought he was a god of iron. They burned him, along with the crown. You lean against the workbench, arms crossed. And the forge? Lazarick nods slowly. They say it was sealed, left to go cold. But when someone finally opened it again, the fire was still burning. You look around. Same forge, same bricks, same anvil. Do you think it's haunted? You ask, half joking. No, Lazarick says, not smiling. I think it's remembering. That's when the wind starts. Soft at first, like a breeze whispering through the cracks in the door. Then stronger. You feel it snake up from the floor, not from outside. The hair on your arms lifts. The coals shift, backward, like they're being pulled in reverse. Your apprentice enters, holding a bundle of wood and completely unaware. The tanner's daughter says her latch broke again, he announces, then stops, sniffing the air. Why's it freezing in here? Before you can answer, the anvil groans. It's subtle, just a low metallic sound like a whale humming in a deep sea, but it comes from within the metal, not from pressure, not from temperature, but from resonance. You step toward it and lay your palm on the face. It's vibrating. Lazarick, you whisper. He's already standing. I think we found your ghost. The ground beneath you shifts, only slightly, like something exhaling far below. Not an earthquake, a tremor. Controlled, focused. Then silence, until the door creaks open. No wind, no movement. Just an opening. There's no one there, but you feel it. A presence. The apprentice grabs a hammer. Lazarick grabs the journal. You grab the iron poker, because of course. You step to the threshold, peer out into the gray morning. The village is still asleep. No footsteps, no torches, no horses, nothing. But on the ground outside the door, placed with eerie precision, is a small bundle, wrapped in black cloth. No note. You bring it inside. The moment it crosses the forge threshold, the flames flare. Not brighter, but taller, reaching high like arms stretching for the sky. You unwrap the bundle. Inside is a twisted metal crown, jagged, blackened, shaped like it was once elegant, then dragged through a furnace and reshaped by grief. The edges are marked with spirals, deep spiraling grooves, not etched, forged in. You don't touch it. Lazarick steps forward. That's it, he says softly. That's his crown. The one that made a man go mad. The one forged in this very fire. The apprentice whispers, "Why would someone bring it back?" No one answers, but in the pit of your stomach, you know. Because the forge is awake now. It's not just remembering, it's rebuilding. Something was started here, years ago, and left unfinished. A crown, a forge, a voice in the fire. Now it wants to finish the work. And it's using you. The crown pulses once, the metal humming softly, like a voice just out of reach. You wrap it again. Seal it in a box. Hide it. But the fire doesn't dim. You sit by it that night, staring into the coals, heart pounding like a hammer on iron, and you wonder, how much of this is you? And how much is the forge? You're barely 2 bites into your breakfast when your old rival rides into town again, cloak billowing behind him like some smug storm cloud. Garin of Eld Hollow, the flashiest smith this side of the river, and the only man you've ever wanted to punch using his own anvil. His chainmail still glints like it's been polished by moonlight and vanity. His horse is a stallion, of course, jet black, well-fed, too pretty to be practical. And strapped across the saddle, a new sword, long, curved, sleek. A weapon built to dazzle and disembowel. You take another bite of your bread. It's stale, fitting. He spots you immediately. There's no way he wouldn't. He turns his mount with theatrical ease and saunters, yes, saunters, right up to your forge. The apprentice groans loudly from his seat near the coal stack. Lazarick doesn't look up from his notes, but his quill scratches faster. "Still banging rocks together, I see," Garin says, dismounting with the kind of practiced flair only someone who practices dismounting can pull off. You wipe your hands. "Still mistaking shine for skill, I see." He grins. "And still not charging what you're worth. You're dragging down the value of every hammer in the region. I'd rather be cheap and useful than expensive and ornamental." He looks around the forge, nose wrinkling slightly at the smell of honest work. Then, without asking, he walks over to your tool rack and picks up one of your newer chisels. The one you forged 2 days ago from the bloom you smelted back when the fire first started acting strange. He turns it in his hand, expression unreadable. "This is better than I expected," he mutters. You cross your arms. "Don't pass out from the compliment." He sets it down. "Which is why I'm here." That catches you off guard. "To compliment my chisel? To challenge you!" You laugh, but it sounds more nervous than amused. "We already did that." Garin nods. "Yes, and you won, barely." Your apprentice coughs pointedly. "By a lot, actually." Garin ignores him. "But I've learned new techniques from a contact in the capital. They showed me something rare, something special." He reaches into his saddlebag and pulls out a thin, wrapped object. When he unwraps it, your stomach twists. It's a dagger, small, sinuous, made from some kind of rippling black metal you don't recognize. The blade catches the light and doesn't reflect it. It bends it, absorbs it, like a shadow that learned how to cut. You stare at it. "Where did you get that?" He smiles. "That's my secret." Lazarick finally looks up. "That's not normal iron," he says. "It's not iron at all." You agree, quietly, because looking at that blade makes your bones itch. There's something wrong with it. Not in the shape, it's perfect, too perfect, but in the feel, like it was made by hands that never slept or breathed. Garin twirls it once, theatrically. "I want a rematch. You and me, best of our craft. No judges, just steel." You hesitate. You shouldn't. But you do, because the forge behind you flares ever so slightly, as if reacting, as if listening. Garin notices. "Something wrong?" "No," you say slowly. "Just wondering if you brought your own crying towel." He laughs, loud. "Still sharp?" I like that. The challenge is accepted before you fully understand why. Maybe it's pride, maybe it's pressure, or maybe it's because your forge wants it. You don't like admitting that, but it's there, in how the fire dances, in how the anvil hums slightly under your feet. You're no longer just using the forge, you're part of it. You give yourself 2 days. This time, you choose something unusual. Not a sword, not a dagger, a chain. A simple, unbreakable iron chain made from the new bloom, tempered and folded again and again, its links shaped not by brute strength, but by exact timing, precision, rhythm. Anyone can make a chain, but this one will be alive. You forge each link with care. Each one interlocks with the next like teeth, like vertebrae, like thought itself. You don't just hammer the metal. You coax it into place. Lazarick watches in silence, his journal forgotten. Even the apprentice says nothing. The only sound is the hammer and the hiss of steam. On the second night, something happens. You're finishing the final link, holding it over the coals, when a gust of wind, not outside, but from inside the forge, rushes across the room. It knocks over a stool, blows ash into your face. You stagger back, and the link, still red hot, drops into the fire. The coals swallow it, with a gulp. You reach in with the tongs, frantically digging, but it's gone. A full minute of silence. Then, clink. The chain link is back on the anvil. Cold, whole, shaped. Better than before. You pick it up slowly. It's perfect. Too perfect. Lazarick doesn't speak, but you can feel his question. Did you forge it, or did the forge? You link it to the rest of the chain. It fits like it was always waiting for it. The next morning, you meet Garin in the square. He unveils his blade again, still dark and gleaming. He cuts through wood, leather, and even a bone from the butcher's shop. Then you present the chain. You hand it to him. Break it, you say. He laughs, tries, fails. He wraps it around a post, pulls, yanks, grunts. Nothing. The crowd watches, silent. You tug it once. It gives, moves, but never snaps. Garin's grin fades. He hands it back, then quietly, "What is this?" You don't answer, because you don't know. But the forge behind you glows a little hotter. And in the faint curve of the chain, when the light hits just right, you see it. The spiral, just for a second. Then it's gone, but you know it was there. So does the forge. So does he. And this time, your victory doesn't feel like pride. It feels like permission. It's raining by the time you get back to the forge, that slow, soaking kind of rain that doesn't shout, doesn't pound. It just seeps into the ground, into the walls, into your boots. The forge's roof leaks in 3 places, none of them convenient, and the smell of wet coal clings to the air like guilt. You drop your cloak on a hook and wring out your sleeves while the fire crackles low, reluctant, as if even it wants the day off. The apprentice is asleep in the corner, using a sack of scrap iron as a pillow. Lazarick, however, is very much awake. He's hunched over your workbench, frowning at a twisted piece of bronze, something he melted down, he cast, and he keeps muttering about like it insulted his mother. You glance at the work. That's the 5th one. He doesn't look up. They keep warping. Maybe it's your mold. He finally meets your eyes. No, it's not the mold. It's the forge. You raise an eyebrow. Blaming the tools already? He straightens, wipes his hands on his robe, and gestures toward the fire. It's too hot, even when I use less fuel. Even when the bellows aren't running. Something's... He pauses, squints. It's like it wants to melt everything. You walk over to the hearth, squat beside it, and listen. Not with your ears, with your bones. You've developed a strange talent lately. Reading heat the way a hunter reads tracks. And he's right. The fire isn't just burning, it's pressurizing. Like a forge trying to cook something it can't quite reach. You toss in a handful of raw ore just to see what happens. It bubbles instantly, melting far too fast, spreading across the coals like mercury. Lazarick and you both take a step back. Normal forges don't do that, he says quietly. You agree, not anymore. You decide to work with it because honestly, what else can you do? If the forge wants to run hot, let it. You start shaping something, just a basic carving knife, the kind you could sell for a handful of copper and a nod. But when the iron hits the anvil, it sings. Not in the poetic sense, it literally sings. A note. Clear. Soft. A single, perfect tone. The apprentice jolts awake. What in the name of Saint Hammerhead was that? You strike the blade again. Ding. Same note. Lazarick scrambles for his journal. That's a harmonic resonance. I've seen diagrams of weapons forged for temples that produce tones to ward off spirits. You raise an eyebrow. You're saying I made a holy knife? He shrugs. Maybe. Or a cursed one. Could go either way. You finish the knife, polish it, and lay it flat on the bench. Even at rest, it hums. A quiet vibration. You wrap it in leather and store it behind a loose plank. Maybe someone will need it later. Maybe you'll need it. But even as you work, you feel something creeping in. A sense, like being watched. Not by people, not even by animals, but by history. Like the forge is remembering all the hands that came before yours. The tools they built. The things they lost. Lazarick leans in close later that evening, while the apprentice is outside throwing rocks at the well rats. There's something under this place, he whispers. You keep sharpening a blade. Like, structurally? No. I mean beneath it. A space. Hidden. You sigh. Of course there is. He shows you a drawing. Something he copied from an old Abbey page. It's a sketch of a forge. Your forge. Only older. Surrounded by symbols and runes. Below it is a series of lines, curves, and an ominous spiral labeled in tight script. The hollow path. You look at him. What does that mean? He shrugs. It means the forge wasn't built on the land. It was built to reach something. That night, the rain stops. The clouds lift. And the forge, despite not being stoked, glows anyway. You wake in the middle of the night to the sound of movement. Not loud, subtle, a dragging sound, a shifting. You grab the poker and nudge Lazarick awake. The apprentice is already up, holding the carving knife like a torch, eyes wide. The sound is coming from below. You check the floor. You've walked this space 1,000 times. There's a seam you've never noticed, hair thin, right behind the coal bin. You clear away the tools and scrap around it. The seam's in the shape of a square, a hatch. Of course, because ancient, semi-haunted forges always come with secret doors. You pry it open. It creaks, loud, reluctant. Cold air rushes up from the gap. It smells like iron and something older than memory. Inside, stairs, narrow, stone, leading down into black. The apprentice looks at you. You're not seriously going down there. You already are. Lazarick grabs a lantern. The apprentice grabs your sleeve. We're all going to die, right? You pat his hand. Probably. You descend into darkness. The air changes as you go. Heavier. Metallic. Like breathing through chainmail. The stairs twist, spiral. Of course they spiral. And eventually open into a room. You shine the lantern. It's not big. Circular. Carved from stone and time. The walls are covered in spirals. Carved by hand. Over and over. No pattern. No spacing. Just obsession. In the center, a pedestal. And on it, a small anvil. But not like yours. This one's etched with runes. Cracked. Blackened. And beneath it, a pile of discarded tools. Rusted. Broken. Familiar. Some of them are yours. Lazarick steps closer. I think this forge has been feeding. You kneel beside the pile. And at the very bottom, half buried in ash, is the crown. You buried it. You hid it. And it came here anyway. It's waiting. You don't touch it, but the forge above you flares. And for the first time, you realize you're not forging weapons, you're forging a memory. Something wants to be remembered. And you're its hammer. You don't sleep that night. None of you do. After finding the hidden chamber beneath the forge, after seeing your own tools rusting on a shrine that shouldn't exist, you sit in silence for hours. The forge burns low, but it never goes out. You don't feed it. You don't stoke it. Still, it breathes. Steady. Patient. Like a predator curled in the dark, not hunting, not chasing, just waiting. The crown stays in the chamber. You left it on the cracked anvil where you found it, wrapped again in cloth and sealed with a rune Lazarick scribbled from memory. You don't know if it'll hold. You don't even know what it is, really. All you know is The spiral in the metal has started to show up everywhere. On scrap, on tongs, on the edge of your anvil. Places you didn't mark. Places you swore you hadn't touched. The forge is marking you. By morning, the village starts knocking. First a man with a bent scythe, then a woman whose wagon wheel has snapped clean through, then a shepherd, soaked and frantic, holding a blade snapped at the hilt. All of them speak in hushed tones. All of them glance over their shoulders, because something's out there. You hear the stories. A merchant wagon found gutted on the road. No sign of an ambush, no arrows, no blood, just the iron rings missing from every wheel. The barrel hoops gone. Even the nails ripped from the carts. One traveler says he saw shadows moving under the earth. Another swears he heard singing coming from a rusted helm he found buried in the mud. And always in the center of it all, they say the same thing: the spiral. You try to bury yourself in work, but it's harder now. Not because of fear, because the metal's too compliant. It bends before you strike, forges faster than it should. You don't feel like you're shaping it anymore. It's shaping itself. You test a blade, slicing it clean through an oak branch thicker than your arm. The edge doesn't dull. It gleams, like it enjoyed it. The apprentice eyes you. We need to stop. You shake your head. I think it's already past that. Lazarick starts spending more time under the forge, in the spiral chamber. He takes notes, sketches symbols, mutters in a language that sounds too old for this soil. You ask him once what he's reading. He says, "It's not reading, it's remembering," which frankly is not a sentence you want your apprentice saying. Still, he makes progress. He finds that the spirals aren't just decoration, they're instructions. The old smith, the one they never talk about, the one who vanished, they weren't just forging weapons, they were building something, a machine. Not big, not massive, but precise, intricate. A key, Lazarick says, to something. You glance at the forge, at the flame, at the tools that now hum when you pass them. A key to what? You ask. He looks at you, and for once he has no answer. That night, you dream of the spiral. Not flat, not carved, not etched, endless. A tunnel, twisting in on itself, deeper and deeper, spinning faster the further you fall. You don't walk it, you become it. Your arms are iron, your chest is fire. You are the forge, and the forge is not a place, it's a being. When you wake, your hand is clenched. Inside your palm, a shard of metal, thin, sharp, fresh. It wasn't there before, and yet your fingers are clean. No blood. Lazarick inspects it. It's not from anything we've made. You test the edge. It sings, high, pure, like wind through stone. You toss it into the scrap pile. The next day, it's back on your bench. The Baron sends a letter, a real one this time. Stamped, sealed, summoning you, again. But it's not for a sword, not this time. He wants answers. There have been whispers of cursed forges, of blades that scream, of iron that moves. He writes, "They say you are the center of it. Come, or we will come to you." You stare at the paper for a long time, then burn it, because you already know. They're right. You are the center of it. The forge chose you, and it's not done yet. The apprentice starts wearing gloves when he works now. Says the hammers are too warm, too alive. You don't blame him. Your own hands haven't felt cold in weeks. Even when the fire dies, your skin glows. You could leave, walk away, burn the place down, scatter the ashes, run to the coast and live like a hermit. But deep down, you know, there's no leaving. Because whatever this is, it isn't finished. Not until the spiral closes. And you know what's waiting at the center. You've seen it in dreams, the crown, the key, the voice, and it's calling. The first snow comes early, too early. It falls in tight, dry flakes that swirl sideways instead of down, like they're unsure about staying. The village wakes to a crust of white that feels wrong, not the soft, cozy kind that says, make stew and stay inside, but the brittle, spiteful kind that crunches like teeth underfoot. You watch it from the doorway of the forge, mug of weak beer in your hand, wondering if snow can rot from the inside. The cold isn't real cold either. Not sharp, not clean. It's the kind of cold that creeps into your chest and nestles there, like it plans to hatch something. Lazarik's sketching again. His pages are covered in spirals now. Some neat, some frantic, some drawn so hard the charcoal broke through the parchment. The apprentice is quiet, too. He's taken to sharpening the same knife over and over. It was never meant to cut more than rope, but now it shaves iron filings off nails like it's hungry. You haven't made a proper horseshoe in weeks. You were a blacksmith. Now you're a midwife for things that shouldn't exist. It starts again with a knock. Not a polite knock. A commanding one. Rhythmic. Like a summons from something that doesn't ask twice. You open the door to find a man standing there in a coat, so soaked it drips black onto the stones. His hair's gone white at the edges, though his face isn't old. His boots are good, too good, and his gloves are too clean for someone who's been traveling in this weather. He removes his hood. You know that face. You don't remember it, but you know it. He nods like he's been expected. I need a key. You don't speak. He holds up a piece of iron. It's familiar, uncomfortably so. It's one of your castings, but not one you've made yet. Your mouth goes dry. I'll pay, he adds, and offers a pouch that doesn't jingle like coin. You don't look inside. You just say, "Come back tomorrow." He smiles like he knew you'd say that. Don't wait too long. The forge doesn't like delays. Then he turns and walks into the snow, leaving no prints behind. You shut the door and lock it for the first time in months. The forge groans. Not a crack or a creak, an actual groan, like it's tired of waiting, like something beneath the floorboards is shifting again, eager, twitching like a muscle about to spasm. Lazarik looks up. The spiral's almost complete, he says, on the lower wall. It's closing. You don't answer. You go down there yourself that night, lantern in hand, footsteps muffled by layers of ash and bone dust. The underground chamber is colder now. The crown still sits where you left it, but its edges pulse faintly, like it's breathing. The walls are covered in spirals, and he's right. One of them, the biggest, has been growing, link by link, line by line, and it's almost closed. You run your fingers along the edges. The grooves feel warm, too warm for stone. The moment your skin touches the center, the air shifts. The chamber tightens. You feel it in your teeth first, then in your chest. You pull away. The forge flares upstairs hard enough to rattle the floor. You rush up to find the fire blazing, coals white hot, bellows pumping themselves. The apprentice's voice cracks as he backs into the corner. I didn't touch anything. Lazarik is already muttering Latin, not prayers, warnings. Then you hear it. The sound, not the forge, not the wind. Metal, moving. From inside the walls. At first it sounds like chains dragging, then gears, then footsteps made of iron on stone. No rhythm, no breath, just noise. Machinery that's been still for centuries and is finally remembering its purpose. Then, nothing. Silence, as total as the night before a battle. You step outside, expecting to see smoke, or soldiers, or shadows. Instead, you see firelight in the distance. Small, deliberate, not a wildfire, a beacon. Lazarik steps beside you. That's from the old watchtower, he says. No one's lit that since the Baron's grandfather was alive. You ask, what's out there? He swallows. Nothing. Which is, of course, worse than something. You stoke the forge yourself that night. Slowly, carefully. The fire crackles back to life, but it's quiet now. Watching. Like it's judging whether you're still worthy. or whether someone else should be holding the hammer. You test it with a small piece of steel, just a sliver. When it heats, it doesn't glow orange. It glows blue, and it sings. The apprentice drops his tools. "Nope, no thank you, not today." Lazarus steps closer. "Do it." You hesitate, then strike. The steel folds like butter, smooth, effortless. You make a pin. Just a pin. Small, almost invisible. You press it into a block of wood, and it vanishes. Clean through. You pull it out and hold it up. It's warm, not hot. Warm like blood. The mark is there. Spiral. Centered. You set it down. You don't say it, but they already know. You've crossed a line. There's no unmaking what you just made, and the forge knows it too. That night you sleep with the hammer beside your bed. But you still dream of the spiral. This time it's not just a tunnel. It's a map. A route. Somewhere far below, deeper than the quarry, deeper than the roots of the forge, is a chamber. And in that chamber is a heart of iron, of fire, of you. You don't eat. You don't speak. You wake before the sun, throw open the forge doors, and begin work like a man possessed. Not driven, possessed. The hammer doesn't feel like your hand anymore. It feels like an extension of something larger, like the forge has reached up through the handle and wrapped itself around your bones. You used to wonder how the old smiths worked so long without breaking. Now you know. They didn't. They were taken. The forge no longer waits for you. It anticipates you. The coals light themselves. The bellows breathe on their own. The steel sings its note before you even strike it, as though it wants to be reshaped. You don't forge blades anymore. You birth them. Lazarus watches you with awe and just a little fear. The apprentice doesn't even try to help. He knows now. You're not teaching them. You're showing them what it looks like when a man walks into the flame and lets it keep him. And the dreams, they don't stop. Every night now the spiral deepens. You're walking it in your sleep, over and over, circling down and down into a place where iron drips like water and fire speaks in your voice. The forge is there, but not as stone and coal. It's alive, breathing, wrapped around something massive, something ancient, something that remembers. You try to resist it, at least at first. Try to put your hammer down. Take a day off. You even walk to the edge of the woods with a bundle of food and a vague plan of vanishing into a cabin no one knows about. But the sky tilts when you leave. The ground under your feet feels wrong. Your breath shortens. Not from running, but from being too far. The forge isn't a place anymore. It's an anchor. You can't leave it. Or rather, it won't let you. When you return, the coals roar. The walls shake. Sparks burst upward like a cheer. "Welcome back," they seem to say. "Now finish what you started." Lazarus has stopped writing. He started chanting, not loud, not dramatic, just low, whispering things in Latin, sometimes Greek, sometimes a language you don't recognize. He says it helps keep the forge in balance. You're not sure if it works or if it just keeps him sane. Either way, you let him do it. The apprentice has grown quiet, thoughtful. He sharpens, oils, organizes tools you don't remember crafting. At night, he sleeps with a blade under his blanket, not out of fear, out of reverence. The village doesn't ask questions anymore, they just come. One man asks for nails. You make him 27 in 2 minutes. They glow faintly. He doesn't notice. Another asks for a pitchfork. You forge it in a single heat. When he uses it later, he claims it sinks into the soil like it's choosing where to land. Then the woman arrives. Not young, not old, just present. Like she's been there all along, just unseen. She wears simple robes, a ring of iron on every finger, and carries no weapon. But every villager steps aside for her like she's a walking storm. She doesn't knock. She just enters. You don't need to ask who she is. She's a keeper, one of the old order, the ones who tended the boundary between forge and flame before the abbeys ever wrote it down. You thought they were myth, But then again, you thought you were just a blacksmith. She walks straight to the fire. Doesn't flinch, doesn't blink, just watches. It's almost ready, she says. You nod. What is? She turns to you. Her eyes are steel gray. Literally, there's a sheen to them that reflects flame. The gate. You swallow. Gate to what? To the place the first forge opened. Before language, before kings, before gods. You glance at Lazarick. He's frozen, lips still half-formed around a chant. You're not the first, she says. You're just the first in a long time. And that's when you understand. This has happened before. The spiral, the tools, the fire, the chamber beneath the forge. All of it. It's a cycle. And you, poor soul, were just next in line. The keeper hands you a stone. Smooth, black, etched with a perfect spiral that somehow shimmers in 3 dimensions, even though it's flat. When the crown calls, she says, strike this upon the anvil and step back. You hold the stone. It feels warm, but not like fire, like memory. Then she leaves. No more words, no instructions, just a nod and the sound of her footsteps fading into snow. The spiral in the chamber closes that night. Fully. Cleanly. You watch it seal with your own eyes, the groove completing itself in a single silent flash. And then the forge goes dark. No flame. No heat. Dead. For the first time in weeks, the forge is silent. You try to relight it. Nothing. The bellows won't move. The coals stay cold. The tools hum no more. Lazarick stares at the hearth, hands shaking. It's finished, he says. No, you whisper. It's waiting. And you know what to do. You go to the chamber beneath the forge. You retrieve the crown, still warm, still pulsing. You place it on the anvil, and then, heart hammering, you take the spiral stone and strike. There's no sound, no light, just a pull. Not on your body, on yourself. Like your soul's being inverted, turned inside out, unraveled thread by thread. Lazarick screams. The apprentice collapses. The tools shatter, and the crown cracks. Then splits. Then opens, and from within it, something steps out. Not a person, not a beast, not a god. Just iron, given thought. Fire, given shape. A being that remembers. It looks at you, and it smiles. Not with a face, with everything. Because you forged it. And it knows your name. So, that's it. The spiral closes, the forge cools, and the fire finally stops whispering. You sit on the cold floor of the forge, what's left of it. The roof's half gone, the walls blackened and cracked, but you're still here, breathing, shaking, whole, or something close enough. The thing you made, released, it didn't speak, not in words, but it left you with something far worse, understanding. You don't remember everything, but you feel it, deep in your bones, in your blood. The memory of a world that built gods from iron and lost control, of a forge that never died, only waited, of you. Just another smith in the long, endless line, carrying the hammer one step further. Lazarick is gone, disappeared that night into the woods with his journal and a look that said, I'll be back. Maybe not human. The apprentice stayed. He doesn't speak much anymore. Just hammers nails into wood and stares at the sunrise like he's waiting for it to blink. You still get orders, tools, knives, hinges, the usual. And sometimes, late, near midnight, someone knocks, leaves a package, and walks away without a word. Inside, metal not of this world, always marked with a faint spiral. You forge it anyway, because that's what you do. That's what you are. You're the blacksmith, and the forge never really stops. Not for long. So rest now. You've earned it. The hammers are quiet for tonight. The fire is low, the tools are still, the spiral sleeps. For now. Dim the lights. Close your eyes. And if you dream of fire, don't run. Just breathe and listen.